Yes, I can.
Go ahead.
Okay, this meeting is recorded. I'm going to call this meeting to order, the Gloucester School Committee. It's September 22nd, 2021. And we are meeting here in person in the Gloucester High School library. But this meeting is recorded by video and audio in accordance with the open meeting law, consistent with the governor's order, suspending certain provisions of the open meeting law and banning certain gatherings such that in-person meeting of the school committee is not possible. This meeting will be conducted by remote participation. The public may not physically attend this meeting, but every effort will be made to allow the public to view and listen to the meeting in real time and participate when necessary. We will be going into executive session and we will come out of executive session around 7 o'clock where we'll reconvene in public. So if you're watching, we're going to disappear and go into executive session. So we're going to go into the school committee. We'll meet in executive session pursuant to Massachusetts General Law, Chapter 30A, Section 21A, for the purpose of discussing collective bargaining with EPA gate Teamsters absence regarding the employee vaccine requirements, as the open meeting law. The open meeting may have a detrimental effect on the collective bargaining position of the public body, and we will return to open session at approximately 7.
Second.
Okay. And Maria, you will call vote.
Ms. Weason,
Yes.
Kathy Clancy,
Yes.
Mr. Favazza,
Yes.
Chairman Pope,
Yes.
Ms. Prince.
Yes.
Mayor Taken.
Yes.
And Ms. Watson.
Yes.
Okay. We are in executive session, and we will tune off.
Manchester on.
Sorry, that's me. We're working. Let's see, Wednesday.
Okay, you're on.
Okay, thank you. We are going to call this meeting of the Gloucester School Committee back into order. This meeting is recorded by video and audio in accordance with the state open meeting law, consistent with the governor's order suspending certain provisions of the open meeting law and banning certain gatherings, that an in-person meeting of the school committee is not possible. This meeting will be conducted by remote participation. The public may not physically attend this meeting, but every effort will be made to allow the public to view and listen to the meeting in real time and participate when necessary. If you are calling in on a phone, you can press *9 to request to speak. If you are watching on a computer or a device, there is a raise hand button that you can tap or press to request to speak. Please use either of these options during oral communications to be to be recognized to speak. Can we have a roll call for attendance?
Ms. Weason. Here. Kathy Clancy.
Here.
Mr. Campazza.
Here.
Chairman Poe.
Here.
Ms. Prince.
Here.
Mayor Taken.
Here.
And Ms. Watson.
Here.
Everybody's here. Thank you very much. The mission of Gloucester Public Schools is for all students to be successful, engaged, lifelong learners, and I'm going to ask you to join me in the salute to the flag. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, the first order of business is oral communications. If there's anybody here who would like to address the school committee, the public shall have the opportunity at every regular school committee meeting to be heard under oral communications. Oral communication shall allow any resident who has a request or complaint of any nature relative to the school committee business to appear before the school committee, state the problem without debate, and the matter may be referred to the proper subcommittee. For items that are on the agenda, members of the public may address the committee with the permission of the chair. Persons speaking under oral communications shall be limited to 3 minutes and shall submit a copy of their prepared communication to the recording secretary. The school committee chair shall not allow complaints as to individual performance or character. That being said, is there anybody here who would like to address the school committee under oral communications? You have 13 attendees this evening. But I'm not seeing anybody raise their hand.
It's not muted, right?
Not this time.
Okay. And so I will close oral communications and we will move on to our student advisory committee. And Nate Oakes is here this evening. So welcome, Nate. What's going on?
Hi guys. I'm here to give a couple announcements tonight from the student body. We're gonna start off with the drama program. Congratulations to the students that were selected for production team of the fall play In the Forest of the Night, which is Shannon Connolly, Laura Ryan, Ash Cook, Colby Lang, Emily Correo, Malia Andrews, Willow Berry, Leah Numerosi, Calvin Delvecchio, April Smith, Treely Dowd, and Michael Merchant. And then we'd also like to congratulate all the students who were cast in the fall play of In the Forest of the Night, which was Finn Wall, Colby Lang, myself, Nate Oakes, Calvin Delvecchio, Declan Lester, Seamus Buckley, AJ Porcello, Elijah Saroof, Avery Patrician, Leah Numerosi, Athena Rowe, Megan Nealon, and Haley Weed. The performances for those are on November 18th at 7 p.m., November 19th at 7 p.m., and November 20th at 1 p.m. and 7 p.m. So there's 2 shows on the 20th.
Nate, it's pure coincidence you started with that, right?
It's the first thing on the list. I'm not trying to. So next up is the Think Pink t-shirts. They went on sale about a week and a half ago. They're for $11. And I believe they are going up on Friday. So we're going to stop accepting orders on Friday. So if you would like to purchase one, you can email us at, I believe it's rmenery@gloucesterschools.com. Email Miss Menery in the Italian department. If you want one, we usually have an annual picture in the field house. So yeah. Here's a quick update.
What is Think Pink?
Oh yeah, it's a fundraiser for breast care awareness, and $11, and it gets donated to, I forget the name of the charity. I apologize, but it goes to breast cancer research.
Thank you.
So news from the GHS Health Center. The GHS Health Center free food locker shelf pantry is up and running for the new school year. I know it's a mouthful. In addition to providing fruit snacks after breakfast and lunch, students are also taking food home to their families. So the transition program students are meeting at the Open Door, that food pantry, for the free food locker. So they're growing skills around checking expiration dates and stocking shelves and packing groceries and more. NHS tutoring is starting up, and we are already getting a lot of requests for winter shoveling. And kids have been doing a really, really good job with things. Like just last week, they helped Officer Scola with, they changed the name of it. I believe it, the Community Safety Day for kids, I believe, at the elementary. Student council elections have been going all week. And Friday, we are going to be finished with those. I'm going to be going through all of those ballots. So Friday is going to be fun. And the next football home game will be, I think, 2 Fridays from now, not this Friday, but the next Friday. And the theme for that will be the Think Pink t-shirts, which is why we're promoting them for this Friday so much. And then finally, yearbooks will be on sale soon. We don't have a date for that, but soon.
Thank you. Any questions? Thank you very much, Nate, and good luck with the play. We'll all be there, I hope.
Thank you guys, appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you. We will move on to the consent agenda. Are there any items on the consent agenda that anybody would like to remove for further discussion? Seeing none, do we have a motion?
I move that we approve the consent agenda.
Okay, Maria, do we have a roll call vote?
Ms. Weason,
Yes.
Kathy Clancy,
Yes.
Mr. Cavazza,
Yes.
Chairman Poe,
Yes,
Ms. Prince,
Yes.
Mayor Taken,
Yes.
and Ms. Watson.
Yes.
thank you very much. Passes unanimously. And we'll move on to our deliberations on educational issues and the superintendent's report. Tonight, we'll get an update on the schools, and the superintendent will report on his entry plan findings. So I hand it over to you.
Thank you, Chairman Pope. So good evening, everybody. Good evening, folks at home. I'm going to share my screen. We'll go through a few updates here. Actually, I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Bach to talk about our Project Adventure Partner of the Year award that one of our esteemed colleagues is being honored with.
One moment, sorry. I went to unmute, I apologize.
It'll do that.
Camera instead of unmute. Project Adventure has identified Gloucester High School as a Partner of the Year. And there's a small ceremony next Thursday, the 30th in the afternoon. And it's just honoring there's been a sort of ongoing partnership with the school that expanded last year to include mentoring, embedded mentoring with particularly the GAP and Anchor programs. A member, Project Adventure team member who has provided direct mentoring with students, and also a student leadership program. And there had been, as I think I shared last year, plans for some on-site work for 9th grade at Project Adventure campus. That's something that we're still figuring out how and when to do. But for this year, we are very hopeful with the approval of several grants to have the program continue at the GAP and Anchor programs. Just wanted to shout out to Amy Kam, who has done a tremendous amount of work in creating that partnership and also keeping it going through a difficult time last year. And we're looking forward to continuing that partnership this year and building on that program.
Thank you, Ms. Bach. Appreciate that. And I really appreciate the high school's efforts, Project Adventure's efforts, and certainly Amy Camp's leadership. So I'll give you a few more updates. Professional learning update. So we had I think a very productive day last week on the 14th, primary day, when school was closed for students, but open for all our staff. And we have a early release day coming up, I believe, next week. And so the next meeting will give you the committee a full update on just the work that our staff did across the district on a variety of levels. But really got some good feedback on the programs and the training folks were last week. And we'll have another take at it next week, and then give you folks an update on just exactly the work we were doing. So I want to share my screen here and give folks a COVID sort of our not weekly but committee update on some COVID details. Work here. Great. So then after that, I'll give my interplan findings report presentation. So our primary objective, and it's going quite well, is to safely educate all our students in our schools every day to maximize learning, address our students' full needs, and support community and family needs. And we're going strong. Working the kinks out on a variety of things still as we do the first month of school, but folks are really, I think, settling in. This is still up here just because I think it's a great photo and I can't get enough of it, but that's our superheroes in training, Reese Foster School. So
Do we have our running shoes on yet, I think?
no, they were on, they weren't laced up.
Oh,
I
okay.
think if I'm just speaking for myself, I think I've got one laced up right now.
Okay, cool.
But still having trouble with that last, but that's my left foot. So it makes, I'm sort of going around in circles to some degree, which I hope will stop soon. Anyway, so I'll give you an update on a variety of areas here, everything from our reporting to our testing, to our vaccinations, and then finally update on the state mask requirement. So great news on our active cases, which are almost nil. We only have one active case in the schools right now, 2 weeks ago. So that's great. Actually, there aren't any in the schools, or none among students at this point, which is great news. We've launched a COVID dashboard, which I'll show folks in a second, which updates weekly every Wednesday. And that gives active cases and total cases across all schools, school by school. Our principals are sending weekly updates as well with their typical newsletters. Or if they aren't sending a newsletter that week, then they'll just send a communication about the active cases that point in the week. And of course, I'm giving you updates to the school committee every time we meet. So let me show you this. Yeah, this. Oh, you can see it. That's great. Okay, so this is the Everyday Matters website, and just right on the home page here. First of all, you'll see that, and I'll give you an update on our weekly COVID testing, which is launching next week. But there's a very large link on the front there to click to register for weekly COVID testing. But right here is a link to the COVID dashboard, and so this was updated today. It's updated every Wednesday. Takes a little bit of time to load, but it'll get there, I promise. Really? There we go. And so you'll see that there's one active case, just as I just reported to you, and there are 15 cases to date total. And then down below is a little bit of text explaining that's updated every week, and also links to the daily symptom check and what to do if you're positive tests. So we'll update that every week, and folks can go whenever they want to that. 2 ways to get it: from the homepage on Everyday Matters, as I just showed you, and also for our updates as well. The updates up there. That's good news.
And I have this one quick question.
Yeah.
Last year, you shared if there was sort of spread within the schools. Do you plan on sort of giving that level of detail
Yeah.
this
you-
year? Not just cases, but just like,
Yeah, you mean like if there are any cases that actually spread through the school?
Yes.
Yeah, so last year we had 4
Right.
total, right? So very limited. Yeah, definitely. We'll be open about that. You know, we want to, I mean, really what's important when that happens is to figure out what's going on there quickly and address it. And then make sure folks are, we're clear about it.
Yeah.
But first, what we definitely do there, and just so I should add, there's additional communications that our first priority on communications when there's a case is of course with the family, and it's usually the family contacting us, or us learning through the Department of Health. But at that point, I hope folks know, our nurses working with the Department of Health go into action to identify any close contacts, and those folks and those families are always the first to know.
Yeah.
You know, and we work with them to understand the protocols, especially this year. And then last year, of course, you know, on a daily basis, more or less, we gave updates to the school communities. Got some good feedback that folks were tired of those and didn't find that helpful. And so now we're doing it on a sort of more weekly basis.
Sure.
Yeah, but I do want to make sure everyone knows that whether it's staff or students, we are always contacting directly and working with those folks, you know, if they are close contacts. Yeah. Okay. One other thing I want to show folks is on our website here, the presentations that I give to all of you every couple weeks are always on the website, typically within a day or so from me giving them, sometimes the same night. And that's just by going to the superintendent's office here. So administration, superintendent's office. And then if you go down here to the superintendent's presentation to school committee. And they're all here, last year's as well. And we'll put tonight's up tomorrow, later today, tonight or tomorrow. So just want folks to know that those are always there in case you want to find them. And we'll talk more about the website later tonight.
They just said that link is also on the Facebook group, the Gloucester School Committee Facebook group. So if you're looking for that link to the presentations, it's already there.
Great, thank you. And then, so going back. So COVID testing for staff and students. So we've had the test and stay operational. We've had the PCR testing if a student or staff member has symptoms during the day, they can be tested then. And next week we're launching the weekly testing, otherwise known as pool testing. And that's going to be in all schools, elementary through high school. That's a PCR test. If folks remember, if the group comes back, if your group comes back positive, everyone in that group, usually 5 to 10 people, are tested with a rapid test to figure out which of those individuals has the positive test. We reached out earlier this week to families, all families, about consenting and registering for the weekly tests. So the numbers are here. As you can see, we're starting slowly. Just a small number in each school, which is totally fine. But we'll keep on after it. You'll see a difference in Plum Cove's registrations. They handed out paper consent forms. So that obviously is a much better return. We can see right here. And so we'll be doing that as well, sending them paper consent forms. I just want to assure everyone, the committee, but also members of the public, that we will only test students who have permission for the parent or guardian. Okay. And that's a parent or guardian can consent to the different types, test and stay, or the a rapid antigen, or the weekly testing, or they can just consent to one or more of those. But we want to be clear that there was some concern from some families who reach out to us, or principals or nurses worried that we were just going to be testing without consent, and we never would do that. Any questions on testing? Yeah.
So the pool testing is weekly. It sounds
Yeah,
like, so
it's
there's
weekly.
going to be a designated day. Like, sort of, how will that work, especially at the elementary level? Do kids get pulled out of class? Like, how does that look?
Yeah, so we're building it like many school districts are, and so it really depends. So like a Beaman example with only 5 students, we have them come down individually. If they're more, like at Plum Cove, for example, or if the school gets more, we would probably do what we did last year at O'Malley and GHS, which was a cart goes to each room. Those kids come out. It's a very short process, within a couple of minutes. They don't miss much learning time at all. And of course, the younger kids will learn how to do it.
So that was my next question. In the letter, it said that they learn how to do it for themselves.
Yeah. We'd support them with that, and maybe the youngest students have help with that, but if they're getting help with that, our folks would use proper PPE. The staffing to support both test and stay and the weekly testing comes from the state if we need it. And for the weekly testing, we'll have that support. We haven't, since the first week of school, after the first week of school, we haven't done much test and stay, so our nurses have been fine with that, doing that. But if for some reason, or hopefully not, we need additional staff for test and stay, for example, then we get help from the same state. And that's really what's been working through is just getting the staffing from the state. A lot of folks are using that, but Nurse Leader Jeff Parko has been very diligent and very aggressive on working with them, so he's been doing a great job on it. Yep. Air purification, our classroom air purifiers are starting to be delivered. We have 16 that have been delivered to the main offices and need to be distributed. And we'll be distributing them one school at a time. We have 2 different sizes we're getting, one for classrooms and one for smaller learning spaces or offices. So that's starting, those are starting to come in. And the employee vaccination requirements, an update on that. The headline is our employees has been fantastic about getting vaccinations, and I really think that's about taking care of themselves, their families, and our schools, the students and their colleagues, and they've been great. We continue to work through a few details with our labor partners actively, and have just really been really on the same page on that, and I really appreciate that collaboration. Very, very small number of employees have not complied with the vaccination requirement, which is great, and a small number of employees have requested exemptions. The exemptions will be working with those folks the next, before October 2nd, so starting, shortly, just make sure we understand fully about their requests and working through them with those. But it's been really very smooth, and just really appreciate the cooperation of everyone in getting vaccinations and supporting and just supporting schools, supporting themselves, their colleagues, their families. It's been very, very straightforward. And then student vaccination rates. So this time we're giving just by grade. So you see 60% for 7th, 8th, and 9th grade, 56 for 10th grade. That should be 65% for 11th grade and 69% for 12th grade. So a little bit higher in the upper grades than it was a couple weeks ago. But still also, the state had set a threshold for 80%. But at this, and they thought at that point, this was in August, that they might relax the mask mandate if schools got 80%. They have decided not to do that at this point. So there's no change at this point. It says it here for the state requirement on masks. We had sort of signaled that they would reconsider for October 1st, and they reiterated yesterday in a FAQ, an announcement to us that it's business as usual. I shouldn't say business as usual. Masks are hopefully not business as usual. There's no change this time.
So just to clarify, so the Massachusetts state mask requirement for pre-K through 12
Yep.
is just in effect with no deadline.
They haven't given us any information. I got no information from DESE about whether they're going to consider that. I mean, at some point, some time frame.
Right, and at this point, there's no end. They haven't given a time frame.
They haven't given.
This is just current policy.
Yeah.
Thank
Okay. That's for later. So that's the update on schools. I will now go into a longer presentation. Which I hope everyone will stay awake for and pay attention to. Probably one of the more important presentations I've given since I've been here. Let me pull it up here. There we go.
Don't oversell it.
Thank you for your support, Mr. Faza. I'm not gonna say, I didn't say it's gonna be profound, it's gonna say it's important. I didn't say it's gonna be good either. No, so get this to share. Okay. Okay, so this is my report on entry finding, my entry plan findings. The entry plan is something that pretty much all superintendents do when they come new to a district. And the purpose of the entry plan process is for a superintendent to learn about the school district as much as he or she can, learn about the culture, the community, learn about the systems and operations, learn about the instruction and the strength of the schools, gain a deeper understanding of the current state of the schools and learning and engagement. And then reflect that back to the community, what they've learned about it. And then have that entry plan and the work around it help inform the development of a plan for improvement. I've spoken about a strategic plan before. I'm going to shift the name of that as we go along here, but I'll explain that a little bit later. But so that's the purpose of the plan. Typically, the plans are done the first few months of the superintendent's tenure. We were kind of busy last year, all of us, including myself, for the first few months and much longer than that. And so I felt it prudent, and other folks agreed with me, that probably better to stay paying attention to leading the schools and supporting the schools, and take a longer time frame on this. And I'm glad I did, honestly, because it really gave me much more insight than I ever would have gleaned in just 3 months. I had the advantage of working with all of you, working with many teachers, working with our neighbor partners, working with community partners. I mean, just really, doing the business of leading our schools for a full year. The report is based on all that work, and plus some other pieces here. So observations, interviews, meetings, focus groups. One of the most important things and most rewarding pieces I did as part of the process was sit down with, I think, 12 or 15 groups of, maybe a dozen groups of students from the high school, from all different, involved in all different sort of activities or programs. I sat down with folks, I'm not going to list them all here, but just to give you an example, members of the racial equity team, students who are in the CBT program, a group of EL students, some kids, actually I think it was the whole National Honor Society or the whole student legislature, it was a big group. Folks from the students who are the mental health ambassadors, who are the mental health ambassadors, students in the Anchor program, music, performing arts, a whole bunch anyway. And so that's the sort of thing, and sat down with them, and I'll talk a little bit about what I learned from them and learn from things. Data analysis, so did quite a bit of data analysis over the last year and last few months, and that's local assessments, so DIBELS and STAR 360, MCAS, so national assessments and state assessments, demographic data, enrollment, and student, staff, and parent surveys, and then a lot of document review. And part of the document review was just in the daily course of work, but also looking at reading through things like the case study, the Cape Ann Study for Education, done by Downey Institute, the special education program review done by the New England Consortium a couple of years ago, the reports from NEASC for the high school, and also the school district improvement plans and others. So just to give a sense, the result of all that work, I've shared with the committee. It's a 24-page report, I believe it is. I'm afraid I will not do it justice tonight, so I hope folks read it. I'll distribute that and this presentation to staff tomorrow. And here's a table of contents for folks to see, but you can see that it's divided into 3 parts: an introduction and overall summary, actually 2 parts, and then entry findings. I'll go over these pieces in detail. 3 themes. I organized the entry findings into 3 themes: student engagement and connection to school, strengthening instruction and improving academic achievement, and communications, community engagement, and changing the narrative about our schools. So I'll go into detail about those three themes. I'm going to sort of begin with the end, which is the conclusions. And I think I just want to, I think I probably wrote it more clearly than I'm going to say it, but and perhaps more compellingly. But probably the most important thing I learned about Gloucester and our schools and our staff and all the people who work together in them is that we have a really, really strong foundation, a strong culture of supporting each other, of hard work, of what I think is probably the best part, a can-do attitude. Folks really throw in to solve problems. There's trust and there's camaraderie. And I think most importantly, there's care for our students and our families. That isn't the case in every school district. And so it's a real strength of ours. It's different in different places, but that is a piece that positions us well to keep moving forward and keep the improvement we need to make. We are well positioned to continue our progress. At pre-K through 5, definitely, we've been making progress, steady progress over a number of years. I'll talk about that tonight. And O'Malley and GHS have looked closely at what they're doing over the last few years, even through the pandemic, and have clear plans or clear priorities about what to work on. And in a variety of ways, they've already been working on those things. So one of the most important conclusions is we don't need to do a lot more an ongoing analysis at this point. I think most of that's been done. We need to clarify and focus and limit what we want to do. But with a strong foundation and through the work that's been done over the last few years, we don't have to go backwards anyway. We can really go forward from here. There is work to do though. There is definitely work to do for all of us. And that's important. We need to keep on continuing to work on engaging students in deeply and active learning. So they're being asked to do worthwhile tasks. That's analysis and synthesis. That's problem solving. That's communication and collaboration. That's being active and engaged learners. We do need to continue to improve academic achievement. In my report, I described just that, especially at middle school and high school levels, we have work to do. And that's looking at state and local and national assessments. But it's not out of the realm, and we're doing the right work to get there. And then also, we have to continue to support our diverse learners. And we have a growing diversity in our district in terms of language and cultural and racial identity. And that's a strength. That is a strength that we are fortunate to have, a community that is diverse in many ways. And that could be the way kids learn, that could be where they're from, that could be the language they speak, that could be the color of the skin, that could be the socioeconomic level, but all those pieces bring strength to our schools. But they also bring complexity. And it's up to us to continue to understand who our students are, because that is the basis of making sure they know they are welcome in our schools, they are part of our schools, and that's the foundation for helping them learn. And I'll talk about this more, if our students don't feel connected to and a part of our school communities, then it's much harder for them to learn. And then the last piece here in terms of my conclusion is let's stay focused. This is a really hard thing for school districts to do. We have large appetites in schools. We want to solve lots of problems. But the danger of that is we try to go too far afield, we try to do too many things at once. Or another part of that is schools will skip to the next thing year after year. I talk about shiny objects in the full report. And we really need to resist that temptation of going for the next thing. And the best way to do that is to identify clear steps over a limited number of areas, and build on them over the next few years and continue to stick with them. So those are the primary conclusions. I'm going to jump into theme 1 here. Let me jump through theme 1. I'll stop and just see if folks have questions. Theme 1 is about student engagement in and connection to school. And these 5 areas, which I'll talk about in some depth here, are really the foundation of the work we do now and the work we continue to do to make sure our students are known, are welcomed, and know that they're cared about. Because as I said before, that's the foundation of learning. If we have that in our schools, then students will engage. All students will engage, rather. So I'll talk about this, relations to the foundation, understanding our diverse student body, student opportunities and leadership, attendance and chronic absenteeism, and academic and mental health support. All these things really lead to student engagement and attachment. It gives them a reason to keep coming back. So I'll go over some of our strengths in each area and also our areas of inquiry and growth. These are not a complete listing. The report has more detail than I'm able to put on too many slides. But first of all, relationships, the foundation. As I said before, tremendous care, concern, and commitment to our students across our schools. Our students feel supported, they feel known, they feel cared for. Our elementary schools have very strong connections with their families. A large number of GHS students and O'Malley students report one of the most important pieces of data you can know about a school is whether or not students feel that an adult knows them and cares about them. And we have a high percentage of students both at GHS and O'Malley, and especially O'Malley. 90% of students report they are known by a caring adult at school. That is an important number. And it's a number that I believe actually pushes back against sort of an old narrative about O'Malley. It is a caring place where people have good experiences, and students are well known and cared for there. And then also that our educators understand the importance of connecting with students. They really get that. Areas of inquiry and growth. So one of the things I learned and kept hearing when I met with high school students, and this was just, I'd ask them a simple question about what did their best teachers do? And again, students said their best teachers get to know them and they care about them as more than just students. They ask them and they find out what's happening outside of school, what's happening inside of school. The students know that it's not just about the coursework. And that is very powerful for our students. They want to be known on that level. And when they are known about their students at that level, they work harder for those teachers and they learn more. And we can never have enough of that in our schools. And it's a place we can still continue to improve. Persistent percentage of students at O'Malley and JHS report being less respected, valued, or connected to school. The percentages vary depending on what questions we ask, but there is a solid group between 10 and 20%, but depending which question you ask about trust or value or connectedness, they answer in a way where it indicates that we can do better. And what we should also do is continue to use student surveys to assess areas of improvement and progress in student engagement, and really look at those either year to year or every other year and see where we can continue to get better. One of the most important pieces in working with any schools, and our folks know this, is asking students how it's going and listening and learning from that and making adjustments where possible. So understanding our diverse student body, again, I mentioned this already, but definitely from our surveys, there's a sense of tolerance exists. Surveys and actions and observations and being in our schools, certainly a sense of tolerance exists in our schools. We continue to do, not on a broad level, but certainly in strong pockets and sort of school by school, ongoing work on cultural proficiency and understanding the diverse learning in our school, diverse learners in our school. And recent hiring and program developments have focused on improving access for families at EL, focused on access for families and EL students. Some places that we can continue to grow and understanding our diverse student body are continue to provide opportunities for staff to learn about the impact of bias, race, culture, and language on student engagement and learning. Okay. Folks depending on your race, your culture, your background, your language, you have different experiences in any institution, and also schools. And it's imperative for us to understand those differences and understand them so we can do better by them. We want to make sure all of our students are welcome and known and successful in our schools. And then assess our hiring practices to better understand how we can hire staff that reflect the growing diversity of our students. This will be challenging. It's challenging. Hiring is challenging, Gloucester. Not as challenging as I've heard, but we have our moments. But in particular areas. But also, we have so one example here is can we have more and more families from diverse backgrounds come in as teachers, more folks who are bilingual, and we've had some luck with that recently, but also more families perhaps who live in the community or new to the community come on as staff, perhaps as paras, maybe a path towards becoming a teacher, but we have to do more on that because we do know that when students see folks who reflect their language or cultural identity, it helps them be known, helps them be confident, helps them see role models. So that is really the value in having a diverse workforce and one that reflects our students. Student opportunities and leadership, this is a real strength of ours, especially at the middle school and high school. Our students have just lots of different opportunities to engage in school, after school, during the summertime. So much so that when I met with the students from the high school, they kept on saying how surprised they were. They didn't anticipate the breadth of opportunities academically and extracurricular that they were going to get when they came here. That speaks to some work we have to do on communication and outreach, which I'll talk about later. But really, and also they said the same thing at O'Malley. Folks don't know as much about O'Malley before they get there, and they'd like to know more. That goes to families as well. And that's because there are great things to do at both schools. That's in sciences, that's in arts, I'm talking about O'Malley and JHS at this point. Great programs that not only our students and families need to know more about, but our community too. We can develop more student leadership and voice at O'Malley. That's one of the areas they've talked about and they've mentioned, highlight in their sustainable improvement plan. Something we worked on some last year as well at beginning levels. Continue to seek ways to grow the elementary and middle school music program for those students as well, but also it's a great feeder into the high school programs, which are very strong. And then also ensure the sustainability of O'Malley Academy. O'Malley Academy is just a very strong, very successful, after school and summer programs. And we want to make sure that we continue to grow that and sustain it because it's a vital piece of having a well-rounded education for our students at middle school. They're very successful. Attendance and chronic absenteeism. I think a couple more slides, then I'll pause. So this is a real challenge in Gloucester. Yeah, and the good news is that our schools and the school committee are well aware of it and open about it and understand it as a challenge. Another good piece is that we are taking real steps this year, now that we're through last year, to address it. Both O'Malley and I have data in the full report that shows that it's mixed in across different schools at elementary, but then and O'Malley is a little bit higher than the state average in terms of chronic absenteeism, but then the high school, as they know and as they've been working on, is quite a bit higher than the in terms of chronic absenteeism than the state. To the point of it's a quarter to 30% of kids are chronically absent at the high school, and that means they're absent for 10% or 18 days out of the year. So we're working with Attendance Works this year to understand and analyze, understand root causes of that. We're also working with a regional partnership, which includes Beverly and Danvers, Gloucester, obviously, I think Linfield and maybe one other school district. And that's not only the schools, but also community organizations addressing this issue as well. So it's not only Gloucester, but we definitely have work to do. We need to understand issues around their cultural differences are there that lead to differences in attendance, whether it's weather or whether it's celebrations or whether it's just not knowing the importance of being in school every day. And that's one of the reasons our mantra this year is every day matters. That's part of it. Make sure everyone knows that, and that's why our schools are communicating that in a variety of ways through the teacher nights and other ways with parents. And then also need to work to continue to analyze the data around specific groups of students to see where it might be disproportionate, and then understanding why, if it's the case that certain groups of students can't get here on a daily basis, understanding why not, and then addressing that and working with their families on that. And the last piece, and this is something that we have tremendous strength in, is mental health and also academic support, but really sort of mental health and social emotional learning specifically. The school committee and the city have invested in adjustment counselors and psychologists, so we have those at all of our schools, and they're not shared between schools, but they are staffed at the schools. There's better coordination and support for mental health and social emotional learning in place this year. Amy Cam, just to cite her, she is now working across the district, and the value of having that role and also having Amy in it is that she can better understand and work with our clinical staff to understand what they're seeing, what they're working on, developing programs for them to learn together. That's something they're already doing with some consulting, with consults. And then also assess whether or not or how our sort of social emotional learning is happening, not only across schools, well, really across schools, and making sure that it's coherent and coordinated, and we understand how kids are being supported. We have, like I said, some good programs in place, great staff, a good amount of staff, but to take it to the next level, we need to make sure that we're working together in a coordinated fashion and not just on our own. And that new role is helping with that. It's already helping with that. So a couple places, just to keep looking, is that it's clear from our surveys that while there are quite a few supports at Owen Manley GHS, that students are maybe aware of them, but don't always utilize them. So for us to understand, what are the barriers to that? And then also considering when we're doing assessments, considering common protocols. And that's the work of coordination and collaboration to make some common approaches there. So let me pause there. That was a lot. I've been here for a year, learning a lot of things. So hopefully bear with me.
Melissa has a hand up.
I just a couple of quick questions, but first I just wanted to say what I told you earlier. I commend you immensely for this report that you put forward. It's obvious a lot of time and effort went into it. It was extremely informative. And I can't tell you how much I appreciate the time and effort you're putting into getting into the classrooms and interacting with students. Because I know that was a priority that I had when we started our superintendent search, and you have amazed me so far in such a short period of time with the ability to do so.
Thank you, appreciate that.
So just very quickly, just a couple quick questions. Do we have professional development, and Greg might be able to answer this. Do teachers discuss like unconscious biases as part of professional development? Is that part of our,
So can I answer that? And then that's work I started before I got here,
okay,
but it's, yeah.
We do,
You do, okay.
but however, it's on our list of several things that we intend to expand and develop further. It is limited, but it has been, we have been doing it, but it's been limited, and that definitely needs to be a focus.
thank you. It was something I wanted to bring up before the pandemic hit us. I was wondering if the program could look at professional development and discuss that topic, but I'm glad to hear that. And we were talking about bias earlier. It just triggered that question for me. And just very,
So just to add a little bit, it's happened, my understanding is it happened, there was quite a bit of great work on it just prior to the pandemic. But also through, professional learning communities is one way it happens. It may happen in study groups as well. And also we working with Essex Community Learning Foundation. Essex Community.
ECLC, Essex.
Essex County
Learning
Collaborative. And they were supporting us as well, with a group of staff and teachers sort of learning about implicit bias and cultural proficiency.
great. And I know mental health and social emotional, that's the buzzword this year from everybody, and rightfully so. So very impressed with the amount of work that's going into those areas. And I know I've been talking to people in the community and they're impressed too. I know you discussed the ESLA grant presentation, how much money is being put into those services, and I'm very appreciative. My only one concern I have with the entry plan, it's on page 9, and it's the last paragraph, it's pretty much the last sentence. And it says where, after getting a wide variety of input on developing the plan, I am aiming to present the Gloucester Public Schools plan for ongoing improvement to the school committee for adoption in January. I don't want to put pressure on you, but I'm just going to ask that you reconsider that month, because we're going to have a change on the school committee, and I don't know how big that change could be.
Right.
But as opposed to putting something planned for adoption in January, where you're going to have to explain to a lot of people what that is, you just might want to think of that month for
So again, I get it. No, I totally.
you know what I mean?
Yeah, I
And
get
that's
it.
all.
And I think, it's, as I go and I'll explain more of the process from here, is I really do want to make sure that, myself, leadership team and others, Mr. Bach and others, really take time to listen to a variety of folks, including our staff,
Right.
as we develop that. And so there is urgency to create that, and there's also, I do want to be realistic.
No, I understand. I just know there's a lot of members that are like deer in the headlights, and rightfully so.
Yeah.
When they first get on the committee,
Yeah.
and to have this dropped into their lap, like, okay, you need to approve this, it just could be a struggle for some. And I just would hope you keep that in the back of your head when you're putting plans forward for January.
No, I think that's a very good point. Thank you.
But other than that,
Do the best.
very impressed.
Questions?
Yeah, so the only part we're talking about what was discussed in theme 1, which included your conclusions up front, right? That was how we're organized.
That's true.
So would you want me to wait until the end for
If
conclusion?
if you could.
But I will hold off.
All right, thank you. All right. Let me move on to theme two, which is sort of the point of the matter in many ways. So the strong foundation we have and the making sure that students are well connected, engaged in school is really the point of that is to help make sure that that they learn and they have academic achievement, and they ultimately, by the time they graduate from Gloucester High School, they really have identified a path that they want to pursue for the next year or a few years. And what I really appreciate about Gloucester is that we value a whole variety of paths. You know, that's four-year colleges, two-year colleges, that's the workforce, that's trades, that's the military, and others I can't even think of. But I really do believe this community values all of those, and that's really important because they all have, those are all tremendously productive paths, for our students. What's important though is that they do have an idea and they are prepared to, after 13 years in public schools, or say it's 5 years or 4 years, however long they've been with us, that they are not only have an idea of what they want to pursue, they're prepared to do it and they're successful in pursuing that. So, but that takes a whole bunch of work, obviously. And so I'm going to talk about a few areas to highlight how we need to continue to strengthen instruction and deepen student learning. I want to first educate folks on something that is called the multi-tiered system of support. This is something we've been really focusing on at the elementary schools the last number of years. And there's three tiers of instruction and support we talk about. The first is core, tier one or core instruction, and that's what the way we think of that is that the instruction every student gets every day in every class. Okay, and what can they count on for that? I'll talk about a little bit more about elementary at that, and also high school and elementary too in a moment. Tier two is instruction and support, so that's an additional layer of instruction or support for students that are not making grade level progress. You've heard quite a bit about this. We talk about our interventions, we talk about what happens when we assess students in elementary schools. This is typically provided in small groups. And tier three support, that's more intensive support and focused intervention. It's all often specialized instruction based on specific areas of skill development or support students need. Sometimes it's confused with special education, and it isn't that. You can have students can have tier three support whether they're special education or not. Sometimes, and so that's part of the work that I'll talk about is actually sort of developing a more complete understanding of what tier three support is as we go forward. This is, I'm talking academics. You can also have a multi-tiered system of support in terms of social emotional support as well. And that's something that we are also being, that's something that will come into our work as it develops in that area as well. So some of our strengths, we really worked hard over many years to build this approach at our elementary schools. At the elementary level, our ESPs, our teachers, our instructional coaches, our principal, they work together to assess each child multiple times a year. Of course, teachers are always assessing children day by day as they see them read and speak and write and interact. But then we also can supplement that and do supplement that with our local and national assessments. We've got team meetings and data meetings and PLCs and child study teams. Teachers will haven't met a teacher yet that had enough time to do that collaboration, but we do try to provide as much as possible. And that is when teams figure out what students need tier two or tier three support, and also how we provide it. And we provide it in a variety of ways: small groups, ESPs, instructional coaches, tutors sometimes. And that's tier two or tier three. Areas of inquiry and growth, from looking at and learning from our staff and seeing things in action, we probably can strengthen our tier three supports and specifically help our staff with training in certain specialized instruction areas. So they know if a student is short or is developing the skill level and needs support, what's the right type of instruction or program to help that child, and are they trained in doing that? So that's usually where there's a mismatch between we may know what the child needs, but perhaps we don't have the staff is trained in that specific program that they perhaps need. And then also another piece is sort of more of a mindset shift, and that's embracing the concept that all teachers are responsible for all students. And that's about sort of pushing past the notion that as special education teachers, teach special education students and other teachers teach general education students. It needs to be more fluid than that, because there are often times where students who aren't identified as special education need a similar support that a student who has identified disability needs. And we can all teach that student, those students, together or separately, individually, or in groups. So that's an area just to keep on looking into and perhaps focusing on.
So I look at the work that's been done at the elementary school.
Yeah.
And I don't see any mention about how we approach that at the middle and the high school.
Oh, just you wait.
Okay. Okay, and my question is, the co-teaching model at Veterans, where we have the special education teacher paired with classroom teacher, does that help, like, is that model something that people can learn from and kind of see it in action and kind of have those teachers talk about why that's so important?
I think there is, and there's a lot of things learned for veterans, and that's one of them, co-teaching how it works. So because they do, their teachers collaborate very well together. Another area to learn from veterans is just how all the work they've done on becoming really knowledgeable about trauma, the impact of trauma on students and learning. And that's another place that folks we can learn a lot from the staff of veterans. There's in terms of the co-teaching model, there's in any approach, there are some gaps. And I think we also learn from some of the gaps that veterans might have, just because and so sort of how do we strengthen, whether it's veterans or West Parish or East Gloucester. So there's also some work to be done there, especially around sort of continuum of support. But that's the case across our schools too. So, but a lot to learn from veterans and also work to be done there. Yes.
So just because I see we are moving on to O'Malley in the high school, which offer a lot, as you said earlier, a lot of opportunity for different students on the elementary level. Just wondering what kind of professional development or is happening for those kids for whom tier 1 is not that engaging. Part of this goes into the communications thing that I know we'll be able to discuss later at the end, but how are we sort of helping our teachers who are responsible for all the children engage those students?
Yeah. So I think that's an area in terms of engaging students in learning that's worthwhile and asking them to do important things no matter what age they are, because no matter what age you are, you can ask kids to do important things, right? It just differs as they get older, right? That's an area that I think we can continue to work on across all grade levels, okay? And that's the specifics of that. So two things. I'll say within our school district, there's a lot to learn from each other. We have teachers at all levels who are doing that in fantastic ways, okay? And I always want, and I think Greg and others folks agree with me, we always want to start there, okay? But part of the work in terms of specifics is actually figuring that out, okay? Learning where that is and identifying, if that's an area we're going to focus on, then how do we actually make the steps to do that well? Okay, so I'm going to give you a to be determined answer to that, but clearly understand that engaged, high quality, asking our kids to engage, to be engaged and doing high quality work is something that our schools and other schools have to also do work on, definitely. So I just want to focus on some of the great work that's been happening at pre-K through 5 in terms of multi-tiered system of support. That's our collaborative assessment and our piloting and adoption of curriculum, which you've heard about last year related to math. We're doing that on ELA starting this year. We've already done it on science, but that's when we've had teachers and our instructional coaches working together and Mr. Bach as well over the course of a year or more to assess, pilot, and adopt curriculum based on what they see is going to be most helpful for our students. Our work on identifying needs of each student and the work on focusing on instruction, assessment, and learning, the focus on becoming more coherent and coordinated in our instructional approaches across schools, our regular learning, use of benchmark assessments, all of that work becoming more coherent, becoming more aligned, becoming more data oriented in terms of how students are doing, has resulted in steady and prolonged improvement at our elementary school. So we can see over years. What we need to do is apply the same intentionality at O'Malley and in the high school. It doesn't mean the same things at those places, but it does mean provide the time and the effort and the focus and attention to have a similar sort of process and really path, I should say. O'Malley is doing some of this. And so some of their strengths is they've already identified their focus areas through their sustainable improvement plan. That plan is rooted in core values in their portrait of a graduate. As opposed to, plans can be based on a lot of things, but that's the place you want to begin. Where do you want our child or students to be at the end of 8th grade? And O'Malley's been thinking hard about that. Within that plan, they have a focus on effective literacy practices. That is still a fundamental piece of middle school, because that's where students are really applying the skills, and that's where the comprehension and understanding really ratchets up. And you've got to have that same that understanding, that ability of literacy, because you're applying it to all subject areas. And then they also have goals to work on academic improvement and school culture as well. Some areas for them to consider in terms of what I've been looking at and speaking with Principal Beatty and others about is focusing with fewer areas. Their plan at this point may have too many things to do in a short amount of time. So it's a question of timelining it out over a number of years to make sure that folks aren't getting overwhelmed, but you're making good progress in the fewer places rather than small progress in lots of places. They definitely, O'Malley does need to work on their curriculum review like we've done at the elementary school. And they can do it across their departments. That will take multiple years, just like it did at the elementary school. And then also continue to work on considering the role of the instructional leadership team. The high school has a very strong instructional leadership team, and it's a place where teachers and the administration work together to really sort of take responsibility for ongoing instructional improvement. And the leadership team at O'Malley, they're still defining the roles of the teams they have at O'Malley. That's good work for them to think about. At Gloucester High School. So the high school, again, has a very good plan. I think James Cook did a fantastic job presenting that to you on June 23rd earlier this year. I think you really, the work of their instructional leadership team has really been focused. They are talking and working on and have been working on even through the pandemic, the notion of active and engaged instructional practices. And then also, and how teachers can more and more ask kids to do higher order thinking. And that's about, as they say, they want kids to be able to communicate, collaborate, and problem solve. That's the right work for high school students to be doing. And then they did a nice job of sustaining this work last year. Something for them to consider and to work on as they go forward. And this isn't, this is not the superintendent saying like, do this or else. This is about for them to look into and for us looking together. So the role departments can take in being responsible for instructional improvement. High schools are complex places, and it can't be where a person, whether that's administrator or a department head, is responsible for instructional improvement. It's got to be a collective effort. And at a high school, you're organized by departments. That makes sense to have a department take on that responsibility together, and work collaboratively with that goal in mind. The NEASC review will be completed later this fall, and they may that may adjust things for them. So they of course need to be open to that, and will be. And then, as I mentioned already, continuing to apply more active, engaged instructional strategies to make sure students are fully engaged in classes all the time and do good work. A few other areas here: special education. Again, a great foundation here. We have clear, comprehensive procedures and processes manual. That is not a given in schools to have a manual and procedures and processes as clear as ours is. Very good work led by Patty Wegman over a number of years for that. We have a range of options, pre-K through 12, to provide what is expected of us, which is continual support and services. We have strong district-wide programs, which help us educate more of our students close to home and have fewer students placed out of district. The numbers have been going down recently over the last few years. That's a very strong positive. Areas to think about further and consider as we go forward are about building a culture, as I mentioned, that all educators are responsible for all students. as further connecting educated staff, to educated staff. And then also another area is when we do assess students for special education or additional needs they might have, is sort of evaluating what assessment tools we're using and reviewing our processes to see which are most appropriate to use across the school. So that's literally digging in and saying, and really sort of what we want to do all the time is what we've been using or what we've been doing still the right methods and still the right approaches, particularly around our evaluation techniques. And then the last piece on this is English learners. As you know, been working on this because we have our our English learners growing at 10% per year, which is a tremendous benefit to our community and our schools, to have more students from overseas coming to our schools and bringing their culture, bringing their language, bringing their history, bringing the fact that they're accomplishing something that I never had to accomplish, which is really moving to a whole other world and culture, and that's a tremendous strength. It's something that all of our families and really all our students can learn from. So we have 2 bilingual family liaisons in place now, which is great. We had 1 before at the high school, and now we have 2, K-8 and GHS. They're working with families, supporting students academically. We've been, as we talked about a bit, increased our capacity for translating written, spoken, electronic communications, added instructional staff at our schools, and then Chris Castle has been doing, and now Augustina Parsons are doing a great job continuing to build collaborative partnerships with community agencies, and that's on school entry, that's on working on COVID-related or health-related issues. They're working with Gloucester Housing as well. Just great work they're doing sort of on a health level, on an enrollment level, and also sort of school acclimation level. We need to continue to understand who our English learners are and where they come from. We need to continue to understand the challenges they face when they start in our schools and acclimate to our schools. And one area we can think about is how do we make sure their starts in our schools are strong by looking at newcomer programs in terms of making sure that initial interaction with us, that initial step into school helps them sort of just engage quickly. It starts strong. Sam, do you have a question?
So one thing that I think we learned from the stakeholders group is that, and this is something I wasn't really aware of, is that the schools are often the first point of contact for some of these families, English language learner families, in terms of like community and resources. And so I think it's something that is a goal, but I don't see it necessarily reflected here, is how do we make sure that that first contact is also bridging the gap between us and other community organizations.
And that comes in those partnerships I was talking about, which
Yeah.
was Chris and now Augustine Parkinson's and other folks at the high school here too. Have been doing a good job on it. So that's so give you an example of that. So Phaedra Morgan, who works with migrant families, she and Chris now work very closely. She's going to join us as part of the community partner group. So just making those connections has been very helpful. So our staff knows more and more about what is out there.
Yeah.
And really, because a lot of accessing, whether it's employment resources or health resources, or childcare resources, still comes down to where do you call and who do you contact?
Sure.
And so by creating those connections between individuals, our staff and their staff, really is one of the first and probably most important steps to then being able to know where we can, not only where that a family can turn, but who do they talk to, how do they reach them, and how do we make sure that they can, that person on the line can speak their language. Because it isn't enough just to say, go here.
Right.
Often. So, but I think those partnerships that Chris and other folks are developing are really key to that.
That's very important. That I'm glad that we're doing that, because when I was working at the hospital, it was very, very rare that we did that in the school systems. And they fell through the cracks because they had to translate for their parents after they learned how to speak English. And that you're just going into the housing authority and just doing these programs, that's what's going to make them feel that they're welcome.
We're doing a tiny bookworms program with Sawyer Library. There's another program with Gloucester Housing Authority, I can't remember. But then there's, just all sorts of, we're just really, I think, paying closer attention to that and starting and getting going on.
Yeah, I mean, I think more and more schools are becoming sort of like the wraparound service coordinators, right? Like oftentimes that's becoming our role. And so I'm really glad that we are putting priority on making sure that we have staff that are really helping connect, some of these families to the services that exist, but are just hard to access sometimes.
Another example of that is just the new role that Amy Cam has. She's very well connected and she can help because she's working across schools with our clinical staff. She can also help with identifying resources, helping them know where to go do and who to turn to. So that's another place that I think we're developing that.
And you're lucky to have Amy, because I'll take it in 2 seconds.
No, thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you.
I've worked with her for years and she knows the network and she knows the families and she knows what she's doing. And that's we're lucky to have her in our school system.
Couldn't agree more. That's why. Yes, why to support. That's why I was on the phone last night at 8 o'clock. Doing great work.
I just have a question. When we were talking about a diverse student body, and it was brought up in this section of your plan. It just made me want to ask a question. We do like a spirit week here in schools, where kids dress up and something every day, they're doing something fun. But do we have like any type of cultural awareness week? I mean, you said yourself, students learn from their peers, it would be interesting to see if we could have some sort of acknowledgement of the different cultures that are in our school, where kids are teaching kids about things, whether it be the food that they eat or their own culture, or just to get to know.
One thing.
I'm just wondering if there's anything like that in the
Yeah.
schools.
One thing I haven't, and a couple things is our school, I'm sure elementary, I'm thinking of as well. I don't know as much about Amelia in this specific area, but we didn't do a lot of those things that are normal tradition activities weeks last year.
Right,
So I'm not familiar with those.
yeah, okay.
I do know that Beaman a couple years ago, I believe, had something. What you're describing, similar to that from what I've heard, I think you probably were perhaps there, was very successful on a number of levels, but I don't know what other folks are doing. Honestly, on that. All right, one last section. Thank you for bearing with us, with me. So, the last piece is making sure people know how we're doing. Really is what it comes down to, and how we're doing in terms of good news, and also how we're doing in terms of how we're addressing any challenge we have. I want to talk about a few things. One, old stories are resilient. They are anywhere. They are in Gloucester. But at the same time, meaning that people remember, thankfully, we have a lot of folks in the community who graduated from our schools, and they remember their experiences, which are very valuable. And some were good, and some were not so good, perhaps. But those one, two, three, four graduates on the 5, including the mayor. And so some of these stories I heard from you, but from a lot of folks. But those old stories are resilient, and sometimes they're out of date. And because we're doing a lot of great things in our schools, I really want our families, our community to know what's happening in our schools today. Because there's so many great things. There are things we have to work on, obviously, and I'll always be open about those. But Amelia's a different place than it used to be in many ways. It's a place that really cares about its kids and does right by them, and people can do that. So we've gotten better at communicating with families and staff, especially from the district level, I think, and being clear about those things. But we're not as good as I think we can be on sharing the good news. And that's use of social media, that's through websites, that's through performances. Obviously performances were limited last year, obviously, but getting out in the community and having folks see what our students do, because they do great things. And then the reason for all that is for folks to have an accurate understanding of what our schools do and what our students do. But there's also, as I'll talk about in a moment here, a very sort of important reason about bringing our kids back. I'll talk more about our students who go to other school systems and what we can do to make sure they come back. So these are just a random assortment of some of our successes. You know, as I mentioned already tonight, our elementary schools have been on a really sustained improvement path for many years. O'Malley is a place that knows its students well. Our engineering technology courses at GHS are challenging, they're engaging. We are, you know, just this past summer, as we reported to you, we had high school students supporting elementary students on coding. You know, these are great things. Our, as I mentioned earlier, students are happily surprised about the breadth of activities and things they can do at the high school. Something I don't think I mentioned tonight, but really should, is something I really learned from the high school students was how there's an expectation that when they're involved in a club or program in a sport, that they take on the leadership of that. You know, that they conduct the docksiders, that they direct, you know, are involved in directing the play, that they are involved in figuring out, trying to think of an example, in running the Gilnet, that sort of thing. But that sense of leadership and that culture of leadership really at the high school is that, you know, where the staff members facilitate stuff, but the kids step up and they're expected to lead and lead their peers is a tremendous thing that more and more folks need to know about. And then also just the fact that, not that there isn't complicated, but, you know, we continue to upgrade our facilities, whether that's the entryways here at O'Malley and also GHS, whether that's essentially rebuilding three of our elementary schools in the span of, you know, 5, 6, or 7 years. Whether that's just better maintenance and upkeep and repairs that we're doing. The fact that, you know, later this year, we'll look at how do we make sure that the modulars at Beaman and Plum Cove are upgraded, so they'll last another 10 years or more. And I do understand, you know, and that hasn't always been the case from what I've heard. But it is the case now that we're doing a great job on that. And so how do we make sure people understand our new narrative on many of those pieces? I mentioned about enrollment. One of the challenges we have is that 10% of our public school students in Gloucester go to other public school districts. Of course, the large number of that is Rockport, as folks know. But I really want us to do better than this. I want all our kids to come back. But that's going to take a bunch of work. That means we have to both continue to improve the quality, which I think we've talked about some tonight. We have to make sure, if you look at the data, you'll see that in certain transitions is when families will opt out. So that can be kindergarten, that can be 6th grade, that can be 9th grade, typically, you know, higher numbers there. That speaks to how we handle those transitions. First, we make them really positive for folks, but also we make sure that we begin making sure that families and students know about those schools well in advance. So they make informed decisions based on the current reality, as opposed to decisions perhaps made based on old stories.
Can I ask a question?
Sure.
When the students opt out and they go to other schools, do we ever talk to the parents and ask why?
I haven't yet, but that'd be a good place to start.
I do know there was a survey done a long time ago.
Yeah, I'm talking
and-
about recently, because some of the parents that I've been asking things like, you know, we have smaller classrooms again, what's going on, some of the schools here, what happened, what can we do? I think you should reach out.
That's a really good session, and then
You're a new superintendent, you know, you want to hear the changes, because, you know, you don't want to lose anymore. And figure out, you know, is it too late to pull them back in? If they're in elementary, we should be able to get them back this way. I understand the vote because it's a trade school and we have other programs here that's a vote that we could do too. But I'm not understanding why Rockport or any other school for that.
Yeah, certainly are, you know, just in recent MCAS results, we've been outperforming the Gloucester other Rockport Elementary School, you know. And so the idea that Rockport outperforms us is also old news, you know. That's in terms of, you know, across our elementary schools.
So it was
So
the negativity that was at, because even when I wasn't here, I was still, as a city councilor, you know, and I was still at the hospital asking people and doing things. It's why, because I should do registration at the Rockport elementary schools for healthcare. So I used to ask, and I used to see people coming in and just saying, And then when I got some of the questions, some of them, you know, I understand, I said, well, did you go, did you talk to the people, did you ask, you know, the superintendent, and, you know, and some of them, I know that we don't do those things anymore, I know it's not happening, I know there's more transparency, there's more, you know, let's handle what we're doing, so I think you should really reach out and find out what's going on and what we can do, because they live here, the buses, and we all know that during COVID, we still supplied food because we know our kids were there, we still did the COVID because our children were still there interacting. And we just need to find out more why.
Great, yeah, that's, I think, whether it's a student who's having trouble, a family who's not satisfied in this case, or is making a choice to go to another place, you know, or a teacher who, you know, who is new, or, you know, is thinking about going somewhere else, is asking them, you know, why? And that's, you know, a really important way to learn about how we can get better.
Two things, I would really like to see us improve how we reach out to young families, so before they even get into the system, before K. It's something, you know, as somebody who's recently been in that transition, you don't really hear from the schools very much until, you know, countdown to kindergarten.
Right.
So I think there's so much opportunity there to connect young families to our schools. Second, when we were in school, often times kids were coming back in high school. So they'd leave in O'Malley and they would often come back during the high school years because we just had a wider breadth of opportunity, especially in sports and extracurricular. Are we finding that that's still a trend? Are you seeing, do you know that? If you don't, could we find out if we're seeing that kids are coming back?
I've looked at that data, I can't recall it right now.
Okay.
I just can't remember, but I think that's great to know. I mean, it's good to know that was happening, I hope it's still happening. You know, just, you know, and this is purely anecdotally, had a couple folks opt in from other districts into the high school this year.
That was the case also, is that the first time from other districts, like GHS was the bigger pull of the 3 tiers. You'd see people show up from other neighboring communities at GHS that had otherwise stayed in their home community, K8.
And I think that would help us narrow down, like, clearly there's a misconception about K through 8, right? Like if kids are starting to come back, like we need to really get the word out there that our early years, are doing just as well.
Okay, this is again anecdotally, but 'cause I mean, I looked at the data, but I don't know about the, you know, the 8th and 9th is, you know, you also have at the high school level, you have the added complexity of you know, private parochial schools, especially parochial schools.
Right.
And related to that, some of your sport, athletics, you know. So that's another, you know, challenge, or not challenge, just complexity. But that's the place where we say opportunities for inquiry is to dig in and really understand this better about that, I don't know, whether it's the mayor's suggestion of asking, you know, but you know, just learning why folks are and what's their reasoning and then you know, seeing what we can do about that.
I will point out the numbers, close to 30 less kids this year, than last year.
30 fewer kids.
Fewer kids have choiced out this
Many more
year
homes.
than last year, right?
Yeah, so that's last year, that's not the current year,
Right,
right?
but it had gone down.
Yeah, the homeschool, if I look at this, shot up last year, understandably, you know, because of COVID, it happened everywhere. But yeah, no, and then,
Get the official enrollment October 1, right?
right, yep,
Years ago, we did a scattergram to find out where these kids lived that were choicing out, and we found that a lot, like they were going to Manchester,
Mhm.
we had a high population going there, lived on that, near that
Yes.
Magnolia Manchester line.
Yep.
So that scattergram was helpful for us to understand, 'cause we looked into this probably about 10 years ago.
Yeah.
I think it was,
I think similar.
and we had a chart of where all the choice out students went. You know,
Right,
there's many other cities that they go to too, because I think some of them had at the time, had parents that were teachers in other districts.
Mhm.
So they brought their students
Yeah.
with them, but we got a real thorough understanding of what our choice out was and got some answers as to why.
yeah,
It'd be
great.
interesting to try to reinvent that again.
Yeah, I think, you know, that's the sort of thing where, you know, just a little digging, you know, and I like that, I did Skyrim as well, I hadn't heard that we've done that. Really can help you.
Greg, were you here when we did that, or were you in Rockport?
Oh, it's here.
You were here.
And we also, I believe at the time, did survey parents and did
Yeah.
some outreach to parents. And I agree, it's time to.
And I think the
To redo
result was, if I remember correctly, it was the fear of O'Malley. And that made me think of, do you remember, Kathy, around that time, we did some sort of flyer to promote the high school that I don't know if you were involved with as a family or if the Gloucester Ed Foundation did?
That was connected with it, my husband actually.
Yeah, I thought your husband did it. Yeah, it was a
But
phenomenal.
it was
like-
a nice piece promoting a lot of things at Gloucester High School.
And it would be interesting if we could do something like that for O'Malley, because, I mean, even with my granddaughter in O'Malley, I don't know all the great things that go on there, you know, and shame on me for that, you know, the school committee.
Yeah.
But the information's just not out there, and O'Malley does so much.
Yeah, one positive example of that, last year was high school kids made a video for O'Malley kids to come to high school. But we can do the same thing
For,
with O'Malley kids, making a video for younger kids and also getting over there. Obviously, now it's easier, you know, things are a little bit more normal, but yeah, that work of, you know, I mean, I always think about who are the best messengers, you know? And for students, especially middle school students, the best messengers are often high school students, right? And just like, you know, middle school parents are good messengers for elementary school parents, right? They were there, had some of the same questions, and by being O'Malley, those questions have been answered in a positive way. And they explained it, so, but yeah, that's something. The other piece is, you know, and I didn't mention this, but like the communications collateral, whether it's videos, whether it's, you know, printed pieces, those take real time, effort, and people to produce, you know. GF, you'll see, and I think it's posted now, or will be
with
now.
the parents.
Yeah, they just did a great
I
video,
saw that,
you
yeah, it was
know,
awesome.
and it's a fantastic video, and it's also, you know, it's good on so many levels, because it's also, you know, about our schools, obviously. It took quite, you know, someone's writing it, someone's filming it, someone's editing it, someone's adding music, that sort of stuff, you know, when appropriate, but it's the sort of thing that a school district, our school district has to like, you know, commit to doing, and having people, you know, we can do it.
There was one time that we were all upset that there was a real estater saying, well, you know, you don't want to buy the house there, but the school is not accredited. And remember, Greg, we went and attacked after that real estate company. Well, the real estate companies that I talked to, and we sit there and they said they would like to have information. That's how they can sell a home, is when your school's doing great and they have all these wonderful programs. A video, something they can hand out, because obviously, you know, nobody else is getting the word out. We only have one local channel, we only have one local newspaper, and we have to sell ourselves. And what's happening with some of the parents I talked to is that, well, I'm driving one and I'm also driving them all. You know, if I have to go to Rockville for my little one, I'm gonna take them all thereafter, you know, and that, we've got to stop it. Like you said, Sam, is to find out before. Why would you want to do that? Is there something we can do or something? Because I'm not talking about the teachers, because I talked to some of the teachers, I'm going, why do you school choice when you're allowed to take your child to school? Because that's not a guaranteed spot. So if someone wanted to come and take my spot, they can. So if I school choice, my child has that spot guaranteed. So it's costing us double. Because I asked a parent that, I says, yeah, it's school choosing, but you have a right to bring this child to school because you're in that school. No, because if there's a spot and someone wants to take it, my child doesn't get the first priority, but if it's school choice, it does. So, yeah, I can't say the name, but yeah. And
I'm not sure if I'm following you exactly.
all right, so I'm a school teacher, let's say Essex.
Yeah.
And my child can come to school with me
In Essex.
in Essex.
Okay, yeah.
Okay, but the fact is that if I school choice my child there, we're paying double. If I take my child because I'm a teacher there,
You're living here, you're going,
yeah,
okay, living here, you're teaching in Essex.
yeah,
You're
and
bringing
my
your
child has a spot. But
Yeah.
if someone else wants to take that spot, or someone else is school choicing or whatever, or someone else coming in, my child don't automatically have that spot if I'm teaching
In Essex,
in Essex.
okay,
But your school choice Essex, then you.
So if you
guarantee the
school
same.
choice, that person's there,
right,
so it's costing us double.
right.
So I'm going like, well, why? Because it's easier for that teacher. Well, how do we make it? How many teachers do have their children at different schools? Because we gotta figure out, well, what can we do to,
Right.
you know,
Related to this, not the same thing, related to this was that, you know, this year, because our 3 of our elementary schools are full of kindergarten. And that's where school choice is, you know, kindergarten and also few places, but primarily kindergarten. You know, we had staff members who couldn't bring their kids, who were denied school choice, you know, because the schools were filled with kids who live in that school zone, you know. So that's a hard thing, you know. It's a hard thing for we also had siblings, as I reported to you, siblings who had, were in the older grades, and then their kindergarten sibling couldn't come in, you know.
Is that still happening? We weren't able to shake that out?
No, we actually, Beaman got even more kids from their zone. I can report the numbers, you know, and then, you know, Plum Cove and West Parish continue to be full.
But that's one of the things to, you know, think about, right? Going back to your chart. Let's say, you know, have the magic lamp and rub and tell the genius, I wish those kids would all come back. Next year you have 270 more kids. You're gonna turn them all away and say, sorry, is there room for you? Right? Like,
No,
like, how,
Yeah.
no, but how are we prepared? If you're successful in this, how are we even prepared? You know, again, the EG Vets has, you know, same number of students capacity that the two schools have now. Beaman's bursting the seams, Plum Cove is full. West Parish was built smaller than the class that had, the last class of the old West Parish was more students than the current West Parish has. So if this is really the goal for this district, you know, if you get half of them to come back, where are they going?
I do not know that yet, Mr. Plaza. It'll be something we'll have to think about and work on.
Mainly in high school.
And it's a challenge we should all welcome
Right.
and be happy about.
How many school choice children do we have?
I don't know it all the time, but I get that.
It's in the, like in the high 20s, I think historically it's been in the 20s. It's been
School folks are
choicing it.
pushing it. You know, from outside the district. you mean.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'll get that number for you. I don't have it on top of it.
Can I just say one
Yeah,
thing?
yeah.
When you mentioned messengers, who are the best messengers, I think an important group that you don't necessarily think about are the private preschools. I mean,
Yeah, oh, yeah.
kindergarten, kids going into kindergarten, they're asking their preschool teachers what they should do.
Yes.
And I know for a fact that old messages around Gloucester schools continue.
Yeah. Mhm.
And so that group of all the preschools
Right, right.
in Gloucester, you know, would be good to sort of, you know, talk to them, give them promotional materials, let them know what's happening in Gloucester schools.
We reach out to those private preschools related to getting the those families information about kindergarten registration.
Right.
But that's a little bit different than actually reaching out to the staff members and the heads of those to help
Right.
them understand and bring them to the schools to see what we're doing.
Right,
Yeah, I hear that.
because they want the best for their kids. When parents ask them, they ask them what, they tell them what they know.
Right, yeah, exactly. So let me wrap up here, because this is just a moment in time, really. It's not the work ahead. And so just gonna revisit the primary conclusions. Strong foundation here in Gloucester. We have work to do. We are well positioned to do that work, and we have to stay focused over the long term. Draft strategic priorities. These are places we're gonna begin as we start working on and then ultimately nail down the plan for ongoing improvement. Continue strengthening instruction and deepening student academic engagement. You've already said that a lot tonight. Strengthen our student social emotional learning and mental health support. Support our most vulnerable students through improved coordination of services. These things, you can almost say like plus equals improved student achievement. And then as we just have been talking about, communicate our successes within our school community and across Gloucester. These are, of course, the right things to do. But they don't have any, but we could do a million things within each of them. And that wouldn't lead us forward. So the next step is creating the Gloucester Public Schools plan for ongoing improvement. A core value of mine is that we can always get better at what we do. I am not a great superintendent. I can become better. And I do that by continuing learning not only my own, but with colleagues and learning from people I work with, but also outside of the school system, other superintendents and a coach I have and that sort of thing. So what I really hope we will continue to build here, I think we have in many ways, but just a sense that we can always get better. And so that's why we're calling this a plan for ongoing improvement. The entry plan and the strategic priorities are a starting point. We'll work to get input from teachers and staff and leadership team, parents, students, and community partners in the coming months. It's essential. We're not starting from scratch. Okay, we are building on what we're already doing. That's our strong foundation. We need to limit the number of scope and brand new efforts. It's not about doing a whole bunch of things new. It's about staying focused on a limited number of high impact efforts and not shift on a yearly basis, but continue to see it through. People who are listening or people who read about this should, or see this should not be scared about, we're gonna do a whole bunch of brand new things, we're gonna throw everybody, okay? That is not the way towards success in the long term. When I meet with and others meet with staff and stakeholders, we'll ask them, what do we need to keep doing? What some of the questions I ask, what do we need to stop doing? What do we need to do better? And what do we need to start doing in those areas of our priorities I just mentioned, okay? I mentioned the aim is to bring it into adoption on January 22nd, in January 2022. I did get some feedback on that, thank you. So, but then the question is, what does it take to make sustained and significant progress over time on our strategic priorities? And I'm just gonna put out a few things here, which I think are really important. And it's about clarity. It's identifying, like clarity of what we're gonna accomplish within each strategic priority. We can't do all the things we wanna do in all these areas, okay? But we have to become clear on the number of things we're gonna focus on. And the small number of things we're gonna focus on. We have to identify what success looks like in each of those areas. Okay. We have to continue to support our staff and school leaders to work together, to learn from each other, learn together on those areas that we're gonna identify, or we're already working on. We have to assess our progress. How are we doing and getting better? If we're talking about more deeply engaging students in work where they collaborate, communicate, and problem solve. Well, what does that look like that they're doing in classes? How do we support our teachers in learning how to do that well? And how do they learn that from other colleagues that are already doing it well? And then how do we assess whether or not students are actually doing those things and what impact it's having on them? We have to report our progress publicly, both our successes and where we still have room to grow. And then we have to identify what it takes to continue to improve. So the plan for ongoing improvement will have components, will have all those pieces for what we decide to do and what we're working on. But all that will build from stuff we're already doing. And then maybe in a few areas, something, we'll go in a new direction or a refined direction from where we are. Thank you for your attention. I know that was a lot. But in our schools and the school system, we do a lot, and we try to do a lot.
And will this be posted on the website?
Yeah, it's all will be posted on the website. Yeah, and I'll also send out to staff.
Thank you.
Just before we move on, so tonight you talked about a strategic plan, you mentioned school improvement plans, and we have this entry plan.
Yeah.
I'm wondering, it's a lot of information, a lot of good information.
Yeah.
One thing we haven't talked about is your goals this year.
Mhm.
I'm wondering how we can incorporate this into
Yeah,
goal
so,
setting for you going forward, so
sure,
that
yeah.
you're not trying to do other things in addition to what's
So-
going on in these plans.
So the process, in terms of my goals for the year, I like to work that first with the program subcommittee, which I think we did last year, and that was helpful. So I brought some draft goals to the program subcommittee, they gave me some feedback on them, and then they came to the full committee. And I think that was in October last year, so maybe, I'm not sure, I know we're trying to set a meeting. But certainly the creation of a plan that is doable and can lead us forward is my highest priority. Without that, that's my highest priority. And then the name change is from strategic plan to plan for ongoing improvement, okay? And it's the fact that I have trouble saying the word strategic is not the only reason it changed. I promise you. No?
Thanks. So I want to start by saying, I thought the report was excellent. I thought the presentation was good. And I agree. I think it's frankly impressive you being here, the limited amount of time you've been here and what crazy your last word, that you at this point have, the understanding that you do of the district and, where the district kind of needs to go. I'm sure as you expected, however, where I have to push back is, and would begging for some reconsideration or some additional thought as you go into making this plan.
Yeah.
Is on your let's stay focused I disagree about, I agree with you not hopping and like constantly, stopping and starting new things, right? I
Yeah,
appreciate that in that last slide. But, I don't think Gloucester can afford to be timid in its progress. I think it needs to be passionately ambitious in what it's going to do. I've been on this committee, for 6 years. And for 6 years, I've heard your predecessor, I've heard others say, now is not the time to look at big initiatives. Now is not the right time to really examine or explore new ways of doing things. And my suspicion is it's never going to be the time unless finally we just say, hey, listen, we just have to do this, right? I think this is true academically and what we're teaching in the classroom. I think it's true programmatically and how we're delivering our education. I think it's true contractually and what we expect and what we ask of our various bargaining units. I feel we just kind of keep doing the same thing repeatedly, looking for a different result. I don't think we're ever going to get the result we need unless there's more of a change. And I'm not saying that, being cautious or taking, incremental steps is always a bad thing, but I don't think the incremental approach is going to keep up with the speed with which the world is changing, the speed with which people are expecting this district to progress. And the two things I'll point out tonight, again, when I first started in this committee, O'Malley's status as an innovation school was a little fresher, and it was kind of leading the charge in STEM education. And now it's on a turnaround plan mandated by the state. Same thing, when I got on this committee, GHS was a tier 1 school in the state, also on a turnaround plan mandated by the state. So we're not moving fast enough. And those two schools that we're trying to convince people are gems to be appreciated are falling behind because we're not making the progress just to stay where we were. I don't know how through, not looking at trying to swing for the fences, we're going to somehow catch up and or exceed kind of where we were. And the last thing I'll say is that, we had this slight wipe clean last year because of that bonkers school year we had. And I get nervous that it feels like we're racing back toward the 2019 playbook instead of trying to leap forward to the 2029 playbook. And this was a great opportunity where the reset button was, we didn't choose to hit it, someone hit it for us. And we had an opportunity to at that fork to go back the way we used to do things or just say, hey, COVID showed us we can wipe stuff and pivot pretty quickly. We're going to go into, a more modern direction. We didn't do that. I want to end by saying this, I spoke a lot, is that I do believe in the system. Like I said, I think a lot of what I just said does not conflict with the rest of your presentation, with which I agree with. And for anyone listening out there, regardless of whether that advice is heeded, I still believe in this district. I have a first grader over the next 5 years and I have 3 more kindergartners coming in. Like, I'm here with you guys. Yeah, I'm in it to win it with Gloucester Public Schools. I just want, the best for it. I just think that, like I said, there needs to be some swinging for the fences, not on everything, but it can't be never. Sometimes you got to make a leap to try and, achieve what we have to achieve in the little time we have.
Well, thank you for your contribution.
I'll leave it at that.
I hear you I hear you completely as being bold, and that's so important, and what I hope I will continue, I hope I have done, will continue to do is set high standards for how we work, how we operate, how we teach, and what our goals are, One of the challenges I heard is from both, I don't know if it's stories or narratives, was like, Walsh doesn't always think, that should be achieving high levels, like we don't have and that's, I don't know where that comes from. I don't know to what extent that's the case. It's hard to know that, but I don't think our teachers believe that, and we can't believe that. We have to be driven by the fact that every single one of our kids, absolutely has this. We need to make sure they're prepared for their lives, and families do that, and we help with that a lot, and sometimes we do, sometimes we're the ones that are doing that, right? But that's not that at the same time, it's really hard work, and I think because those two things exist, we care a lot, it's really hard work in schools that schools don't quite do enough, So I hope what people hear from me is I see and acknowledge our strengths. And I also, what people hear from me is that we have to keep on getting better at this. You know? There's a quote I have on my desk from Ruth Bader Ginsburg that says, fight for the things that you care about, but do it in a way that will lead others to join you. I have to really think hard about that. I've got to live by that. Because I could easily say all sorts of things and act in a way where I can't work with anybody. And that would harm the district and harm our students more than anything else. And so we need to be bold. I agree with you. And we also have to be bold in a way that'll make sustained progress over time, rather than put something out there that'll, what am I trying to say? That'll where it gets in the way, lead in a way it gets in the way. You know? And so that's a tough thing about schools. They're complicated places with complicated people, and humans in general aren't big fans of change, you know. And changing teaching practice is really hard. You know, it's about asking folks to operate in a new way. And one of the things that I got really excited about this week, sorry for going on so long here, but just one last piece was, I mentioned earlier that our clinical staff is doing some consults with a woman named Lynn Lyons. And you know, one piece of feedback from that was from one of the staff at middle school was that it helped her see how she can do better work with kids. And what was clear in that was that she was excited about that and energized by that. And that's a type of work that I have done a lot of, and we'll really work with our leaders and our team and our teachers to make sure that when we're asking them to strengthen their practice, we're doing it in a way where they can see that they can do it, so they can do it, so our students benefit. So that's a lot of words, but the point for me is, I hope folks see me as a pretty bold leader, and I hope folks see that I care deeply about preparing our students for their lives, and I hope folks see me as a leader who can say difficult things, but do it in a way where we can work together to get it done. But thank you, Joel, for your push. Appreciate it always.
I just want to add to that, if you don't mind. I mean, arguably last year, what we accomplished was pretty bold.
Yes.
Outrageous.
Outrageous.
So it was outrageously bold. So I do think that Gloucester, this committee and our staff have the appetite for it. I think what I hear you saying is that we have to sort of like take bold steps, not necessarily implement a whole bunch of bold initiatives, right? So like there might be steps that are bold to accomplish certain things. And we just need to do that in a strategic way.
Yeah.
It's not that we're gonna just sort of like go at a snail's pace and not make big change. We just need to do that in a way that there's buy-in from people in the community, from staff, and from students.
Yeah, I think that's a great way of saying, you know, we can be bold and like the worst thing that myself and any of our team, school leader, Mr. Bach, any group, you know, teachers, you know, or even colleagues can do is, let me put it this way, it's so easy for someone in my position to deciding a whole bunch of things that literally crush our staff. Okay, because you're putting them in too many different directions, asking too much of them to do, I'd rather work with them and work with our teams and our schools and support them to do two really important things very, very well than 5 or 6 things poorly. The impact of doing 5 or 6 things poorly is much greater than just doing things poorly. It's about trust, it's about job satisfaction, it's about retention, it's about, all sorts of things. And, typically schools have done 5 or 6 things badly rather than 1 or 2 things really well.
Yeah.
And that is where I need you folks to keep me accountable for and keep me reminding me of. And I need my colleagues to do the same thing. Because someone in a position can have too much of an appetite and be too unfocused, and lead in a way that is just destructive.
Melissa?
So on that path, and I'm just thinking of the years of negotiating with the GTA and hearing about how many initiatives have come forward in the past year since I've been on the committee, which is a lot. I mean, there was many years that were overwhelmed with initiatives and you couldn't even keep up with them. So you coming in here and dropping this in our lap, which is great information. How are you gonna get feedback from our educators on how to implement the bold, but not overwhelm at the same time? So is there a plan for you to meet with certain stakeholders, certain program leaders, certain?
So I'll be meeting and some, these aren't, because I was having troubles getting this to you. Or no, it was delayed by 2 weeks, all it really was. So I need to reschedule some of those. But those will be meetings at schools. I'll make it optional for staff, okay? Because I don't want to take their time during their faculty meetings, which are very important for their principals and what they're already doing there. And then I'm meeting next week with a community partners group. And sort of just restarting those meetings. I'll meet with
Community
them.
partners, explain that, please.
So last year during opening, I launched a community stakeholders group, which had, I'm not gonna name them all right now, but a lot of organizations, I think Sam and Jonathan were also involved in it, but YMCA, Wellspring, I believe Action, perhaps,
Open Door.
Open Door, thank you.
It's about time. We did that years ago and they stopped it.
Yeah,
Mr.
so-
Gell in the probation department. We've done that with the chins. We did that all the time. Meet once a month and they stopped it all of a sudden.
Yeah, so we did that, met 6 times last year, at the beginning of the year, and then 2 times a little bit later in the year, and that was focused on EL learners, EL families. And so then the year got a little nutty. And so I've just invited folks to a meeting next week to present, an abbreviated version of this to folks and also share my entry plan, but then also start getting their input on if we are going to do a couple things well in these areas, what is it either that we're already doing well? Yeah, what is it that we're already doing well that we need to get better at or accelerate? And what are the things we should stop doing and what, that sort of thing. So I'll be asking them the same question I asked about stop,
What
start.
was it called? The interagency task force
Mhm.
that we used to have with,
Something like that.
remember that?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
So glad
that's,
you took that up. I am thrilled.
yeah, so and it was super helpful last year to me, that's for sure. And I think to our school, that, we were able to put in place a few different things that we hadn't been thinking about. And then also the school committee through their committees, through the subcommittees, programs and others, be coming back to you and getting more input from yourselves. And then I got a couple other ideas which I haven't sorted out with some folks that I got to talk to them first about. So, but that's and then there's just a lot of listening on those things, and then some of that's about making sure that I'm blow up with what I have here, but really it's about getting on brass tacks about one of the things that how are we going to put, like, for example, let me just say this. So the high school is really doing some, have to work on a lot of these things. So it's not about starting new things there. It's about getting clear which of those things you're going to stick with. I'm just using this example, and what they're going to do by when, and how we're going to know that they're making progress. So it's sort of working with James and his team to sort of nail that down. So then it's obvious to you and everyone else what that work is. So I hope that helped.
I just know with the 2 interventions that are going on at the higher level schools,
Yeah.
I think it's a good opportunity to implement more changes.
Yeah.
In conjunction with what they're expecting to. So it'd
Yeah.
just be great to hear,
Yeah.
to know that you're getting feedback from not only our staff, but also those that are doing the work with us to improve.
In the last year and a half on the sustainable improvement plans, both Amelie and the high school have been, we're making some strides. High school because of NEAS, got started a little bit earlier than O'Malley did. And of course, with all that was going on the past year and a half, that was sort of hit and miss in terms of trying to make that long-term change, long-term improvement. But they both have been making some strides, and now it's just about now it's about making sure that we keep working, we narrowed it down, some focus in some places. I think Amelia's a little bit focused on a few things. Or to timeline the whole plan over more years, but that's what.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, folks. Thank you very much.
Well done.
Thank you.
Can I ask one more question? And I don't mean to be prolonging this, but this whole presentation was great. The only thing I really didn't hear anything is what we're going to be looking at, and maybe that's your task force or whatever you call that, mental health issues.
Sure. So just to sort of we have the staff, right staff, I believe we have the right staff in place. Okay. And we've added some staff, adjustment counselors, that being.
That's what they need to hear.
Yeah, as
You
well.
added staff.
Yeah, and then the other piece that I think is very important, is putting in the coordination, coordination of those services. So those staff have the ability to work with each other across schools, to learn from each other, to improve their practice. Because what happens there, and Amy Campbell is leading that, is we're seeing different things, different schools, doing things in different ways, different schools. Someone has a challenge in, say, West Parish, but someone at Beaman has the answer for that, And so there's been some of that happening over the years, but now we can, make it more robust. And then the other piece on that, I mean, this happens, and it's in the entry plan, but there are really sort of 5 different areas about how we can coordinate those approaches better, how we can assess the need better of students, how we can identify outside supports for students, in addition to what we can provide. So there's quite a bit there. Again, it's also figuring out where is the right place to begin on that and how to move forward. We're putting in some real good, some very powerful professional development for our clinical staff this year.
We had a meeting today with Essex County Commission Foundation, and a lot of your network that you mentioned were on there, and a lot of the concerns with the, because it was on behavioral health.
Yeah.
And what we can do to address it is start at a young age, and what we're seeing now, what's been happening. And what they said, 1,200, and I've been saying this because pre-COVID, we were working with the school committee, and we had an emergency meeting, we had some task force, is that 1,200 therapists, juvenile therapists are licensed, but only 900 take insurance, non-insurance, no insurance at all, that's it, cash, whatever. And it's kind of hard because we have people that really need it and what we could do. So on that note, make sure that anyone that's interested, especially you, I don't need to point the finger at Samantha, is because the Attorney General now is getting involved, and we're gonna have a roundtable there with Senator Tara Emma French and some stakeholders, because we need to address that. So I need to hear all that you have and what you want, and you'll be in that meeting, is to make sure that we get the coverage, because now with the ARPA money and all that, there's more need, and there's more that you can get through it without using the ELSA money or even, cities ARPA money, so.
One more piece on this, in addition, because it's obvious about what our staff do with students, but it's also about how we can help families learn. And so one of the areas that we'll have some programs on this year is helping parents learn more about supporting their kids who have anxiety. So that's another place that will be, and then that actually, a woman who's working with our clinical staff will also work with parents as well. We did a couple of those last year during the pandemic, supported by GEF, and so we can do more this year.
I heard great responses from the summer program, Greg, with that too. Some of the kids really needed it, and thank you. Because you know what, if we don't help our children now, we're not gonna do it. So thank you. That was really, really important. So thank you.
Thank you.
All right, so we'll move on. And our next order of business is subcommittee reports. We have just the one, building and finance, from our last week.
So we met on the 15th, last Wednesday. We went through a budget update for this particular year, and we're still early in the year. Everything looks like it's pretty much on track. We are still waiting to hear from the MSBA, the meeting that they would address inviting people in and attending is on October 27th. So good thoughts that we will hopefully get a call sometime before then that
Window
we're,
replacement.
oh, sorry, window replacement, what did I say?
I didn't say anything.
Anything, so the window replacement, so we want new windows at O'Malley, so we submitted that statement of interest, they clearly, came out and did all their inspection and looked to see, these are windows and they're 50 years old. So let's all keep our fingers crossed that we get that invitation. We had a transportation update from Adam. Ridership has grown since we talked about policies in terms of fees and everything. He definitely was having some staffing challenges, but also some success in finding bus drivers. So I think he's hired a few more.
He has hired, hold on, I think it's right. We have two bus drivers who may, if all things go properly, will be added to routes, can drive for us by the end of October. Okay, that's some nice changes. And then I believe we have 3 more who will be hired shortly. They need to be trained, and that's multiple months.
So Adam's done a good job, the posting around the Rotary, I think, is an amazing way to kind of promote Foster. Really wants good people to join our school. So Adam, I think, is just doing a phenomenal job getting everything up and running for the schools, still evaluating certain procedures that operationally. Open tickets, once again, we have to compliment the DPW for taking care of our tickets, very timely, so many get closed within 1 day. There are only 28 open tickets and only 13 are greater than 30 days, and many of those have to do with plumbing work. And we know there's only one person with that skill on the city side, so
We did find out more about that, and speaking about the concept that was floated or raised, with the subcommittee was, should we contract for some additional plumbing services? And speaking with Mike Hale about that, learned that a couple things. One, a lot of new things came in as the school began, which makes sense, but also just a timing on staff time off, which is a regular occurrence in August. Also contributes to that, and so he's confident that we'll be working, the city's plumber and term assistant, I think, will be able to work through those sort of rapid pace. We also talked about the sink, the long-term sink challenge at the
location, yeah.
vocational program, and have funding for that to make progress. So
Joel?
So I just want to push back on that a little bit, because there were several that were 100+ days out. So even if
the plumbing ones,
there's some of those old tickets, that sink one was most outrageous. The sink one is a year from when it was taken apart. So we're 2 years on that sink. But there were a lot of those old tickets that, when she says more than 30, it was like 190 days, right? So I don't care what happened about time off in August or new things that came in the beginning, that's not this, right? And so that may be the case for some, but like there are definitely some old tickets that have been languishing.
I didn't say it
Yeah,
was
but there's
all.
also been old tickets that were clicked off and didn't put through.
One of the tickets that folks discussed, that being the longest term one, was this sink replacement or sink repair.
Right.
And honestly, I cannot remember. I don't know if Gary remembers the details about
Said
it.
the sink was taken, the ticket, which is 290 something days old, said the sink was taken apart last year. So 290 days ago, they said last year this sink was taken apart, it hasn't put that together yet, right?
And all I'm telling you
Right.
is that now we have a funding source for it. It's coming out of our capital, the capital budget we have in the schools. And the steps were then, I can't remember stuff honestly, but we think that the worst offense on that, I think we have now have a plan for it, so.
Excellent.
I thought it was they had to build a drain or something.
That was another one.
It's not just a matter of replacing a sink.
That was another one.
That was another.
That was another old ticket
Okay.
that's been sitting there
Yeah.
well before us.
It was,
Well,
it's a
I
big
guess
challenge.
what,
Just
COVID
trying to
last year,
give
and I
some
think they were
update on
upgrading
progress.
maybe
Not trying to solve
I
everything.
don't think they were using this thing, so that wasn't first priority. So not in all defense of my DPW, but last year you guys made a whole bunch of different demands that we had to refurbish a lot of the different schools and do things, and they turned haphazard and everything else, and I don't think the sink was priority since no one was in
No,
it.
and the other piece that we talked with Mike about was just that, you know, if there's, you know, leaky faucets are typically not highest on the priority list, okay? And so, but again, he assures us that they're gonna keep on making progress and some of the, you know, we'll keep on looking at the longer items, the longer lived, you know, items and keep working on that too. And that's why we report to, so you know exactly what needs to work on.
Good, we have a plan. That's good. Okay, and the last big item we talked about was the ESSER 3 grant for $4,400,000 and a draft budget for how that's would be spent, including guidance in school, adjustment counselors, special education, behavioral specialists, instructional interventionists, support staff for instruction, cleaning, this attendance work effort to hopefully improve attendance, tutoring, new literacy and instructional software, and facilities improvement. So part of that was the Beaman and potentially Plum Cove playgrounds to be discussed, and then closing in the walkway from the high school over to the vocational. So I guess my question, which we did not talk about that day, is you're supposed to be sending this to somebody in early October.
Yep.
Did we need a vote on this? Because we didn't vote at subcommittee. Was that,
What are you sending?
well,
The
you have
draft
to,
budget for the
Oh,
ESER
okay.
3.
right, yeah, you have to do some reporting, but does that?
Yeah, so we're not finalized with it yet, so I need to get some more input from stakeholders and also from staff, which we're gonna be launching tomorrow.
What about the public? Don't you have to do another public feedback in the fall?
We reached out to parents already in the
For the
springtime.
fall? I thought you had to do one in the fall as well.
I don't think so, but we can check that, and if we need to, we'll. So, but then I can bring it back to the committee. We have to submit it by October 4th to DESI. You've already approved, you know, that we're getting it. That part happened in terms of the number. But we can bring it back to in time matter. That's why I've been trying to give folks, you know, an update fully here. But you should make sure you see, have a look at, you know, the final submission, I should say.
It's like 12 days, right?
Yeah, I don't think we have a meeting in
No.
between now and then, is really why I brought that up.
So Kathy, you just mentioned the Beaman playground. Is that something that could potentially, because of sort of mental health stuff, be part of ESSER? Any part of that?
Yeah, that's what we're
That's what we're
considering.
thinking about?
That's what we're considering right now.
Okay, great.
But my understanding what Gary said about the submittal was that it's just a draft and that it can be amended easily, you know, as we go forward.
Yeah, I don't think there'll be any surprises in it from what I've already been telling you. Depending on when program subcommittee happens, that might be another time to get some input. Yeah, I think that's why I've been trying to keep it informed. But we'll obviously make sure you have what the submission is. And if necessary, if you need to vote on that afterward, and I'll check and or Gary may know if we have to have a approval prior to. I just don't know. I'll be honest.
That'd be good.
Yes, Gary Frisch is here. Hi, everyone. We don't need,
Gary.
hi, we don't need a vote to submit this to DESI. So like Jonathan said, we'll submit it October 4th, and we can always amend it down the road. But we'll certainly, what we plan to submit, we'll shoot it to the school committee beforehand. And we're working with the team, Greg Bach, superintendent and myself to get the input and then finalize the submittal.
And also Katie Brooks as well. That's a good piece there.
Okay,
Okay,
Okay.
moving on to action items. The first item is an approval of the grant, or both grants. Gloucester Education Foundation grant in the amount of $4,000 for O'Malley Science Center countertops.
So moved.
Second.
Is there any discussion?
Thank you.
Once again, roll call vote, Maria?
Ms. Weason,
Yes.
Kathy Clancy,
yes,
Mr. Cavazza,
Yes.
Chairman Pope,
Yes.
Ms. Prince.
Yes.
Mayor Tegan,
Yes,
and Ms. Watson.
Yes,
It's unanimous, thank you very much. And the second one is a cell signaling technology education and science grant in the amount of $8,040 for Boston High School.
I move we accept the grant from South Signaling.
Second.
Is there any discussion?
Thank you.
Thanks again. Roll call vote, Maria?
Ms. Weason,
Yes.
Kathy Clancy,
Yes,
Mr. Cavazza,
Yes.
Chairman Pope,
Yes.
Ms. Prince.
Yes.
Mayor Tegan,
yes,
and Ms. Watson.
yes.
Thank you very much. That's the end of our action items. Next item is an update on the East Gloucester Veterans Memorial School Building Committee.
Is there action item?
It's in the communications in
coming up.
the next.
What?
Okay, sorry, thank you.
Or about the,
Building use.
It's in the next section.
Sorry, thank you.
it's under discussions. Is there action that needs to be taken there? So you want to amend that policy?
If I need to seek your input on whether it's a amendment or not.
Okay. Okay, we're good. All right, let's go. East Gloucester Veterans Memorial. There's been the OPM and the general contractor have started. I'm trying to remember exactly what they call it. They had a meeting today. They had, but basically it's meeting with Joe Lucido and Grant primarily to talk about what kind of training they're going to want for all the systems that are going in, and how long because at this point in the process, they're writing the specs for all of these different things, and you can write into the spec that you want, the company to maintain them for the next 5 years, or you can say you want training or maintain it for a year. So that's that's the ongoing discussion right now. Joel?
So I have a question. If we're picking these systems and the training, is the theory like, well, we should go with the same control systems that are at West Parish so that we're only trained on one set, or we then hamstring yourself because maybe since the West Parish project completed, there's another company that's now providing better control? Like, is that discussion being had about whether we,
That's pretty much exactly why they're having these meetings,
Okay.
to discuss what they should do and how much, they want to put into the spec about of training or maintenance. You can decide, you could have them maintain them forever, right? For X number of dollars a year, but the 90% design development was submitted to MSBA. There was the initial feedback was, this is all good. They weren't saying you're missing this and missing that. Anything else?
Yeah, the groundbreaking is set for October 21st at 10 a.m.
Wow.
Yep. And I think we're getting shovels
Yeah.
and
Podcasts.
and probably some of those too, perhaps. And we'll have third graders from, it's for public yet, but I'm about to make it public. We'll have third graders from Vets and third graders from East Gloucester there. And they'll do some things which Principal Fusco, Principal Pascarell and I are already talking about, which will be a surprise. And we'll have the MSBA there, and the mayor, and a bunch of invitations. and maybe some heavy machinery that kids can take photos in front of, but they can't climb on.
It's at 10 a.m. on the 20.
First.
Is that's Thursday?
Yes.
Yeah, that's Thursday, October 1st.
I think it was 7 years ago yesterday that we did West Parish.
That's pretty
Because
awesome.
the memories were popping up on my Facebook
Yeah, I
of
saw that
the
picture of
kids
you.
singing.
There's an early release day that day too, so,
There is.
yeah, that's what it says on our calendar.
Yes, I think that's right.
Or is that gonna be like,
Not
Shuffle?
not gonna be a problem.
okay.
We're gonna get them there.
That would be helpful.
10 a.m.
You are, it's on the same day, Melissa.
What?
It's on the same day.
It's on the same day?
Yeah, because I'm looking at what was on the shuttles. It was October 21.
Get out. Yes, we planned it that way.
I put that on my Facebook of the kids
That's
singing
awesome.
yesterday.
That's pretty awesome.
We could do
I don't
something
know.
with that. 7 years to the
Jonathan,
day.
you should have taken credit for that.
Yeah,
That's fantastic.
It's pretty, yeah, that's great.
okay.
It's a good pattern to be in.
Is there anything
Mine is
Anything else
calendar
over
7
there?
years later.
on the school?
Sorry, oh, I don't have anything else.
Yeah.
The school is down.
Yes.
Boy,
Anybody's
is it
driven
down. I
by.
ride by there every day and I'm amazed.
Yeah.
It's sad.
Well, we did get an email concerning some of the, rebels and the stuff that's left over, and I did send it out, and hopefully, they'll get clear, so they had concerns that they sent some pictures, and Jonathan, I sent it to you, like, can the kids go around there, they're gonna play, there are some things, any concerns, I sent to you. And, I also sent to police, fire, and DPW, and the project manager, just to clean it up a little, that's all. So you'll know that, and then we also addressed some concerns about, traffic, and we're doing that, so. I'll make sure that they're coordinated and everyone's now has the, and I think unless he runs away, the project manager's, email and his cell phone, so.
And he's been very responsive when folks have reached out.
He has, that's what he's there for, and so I just sent another one out to that person, so, they can address concerns directly to the person.
Principals Pascarello and Fusco have completed a new video to update the school community, about the project and how it's going. It was shared with me just before the school committee, so I have not seen it. I'm sure it'll be as good as the other ones. One of the things they mentioned to me that they learned was that a very high percentage, I'm not sure what it is, but I think it's 75%, but I could have it wrong. But a very high percentage of the materials that are taken off site are from the vets during demolition or recycled and or reused. So I don't know how that process works, but that's one thing they shared with me, but that'll be in their video, which we'll post to the project site and they'll share with their communities.
And Jonathan, the new baseball field plan will be, I guess, again, by the end of the week, we sent out.
Oh, okay, great.
So you can get the new scope of what's going on with the new.
Softball field, is that what you mean?
The softball field
Okay.
agreement.
Yeah,
That's great.
How are things going at St. Anne's?
Things are going well. Hold on, I'm just thinking this through here a little bit. Things are going well. I'm thinking of different things like, parking, that sort of thing. Have had only, as far as I know, one complaint about that from neighbors. And we have worked on that. We are identifying more parking for staff. That's one challenge we've had. I'm really talking about operations here. I'm not talking about
Right.
schooling,
That's what I
honestly. Because I've been focused on operation stuff with Principal Fusco. So we're working on getting more parking, and I think he's gonna make an announcement to the staff on that tomorrow. And it had some really great support from the mayor's office on that. And we're also working to get more staff, or identifying staff who can, from the city, who will help us with just making sure Burnham's field is our school staff's out there, but also have additional staff during the day for just to check on Burnham's field and making sure that's okay for the students in the school. And drop off and arrival and dismissal,
It's going well.
going well.
We had a PTO meeting this week and parents from all grade levels were reporting positively on their children's experiences.
I was there twice for a funeral. It was a little bit confusing because we're also working on the street right out there
Yes,
also.
that's all.
So
Yeah, like the
consider-
intersection.
Yeah, that was kind of, and the parking lot was used for parking for the funeral, and I was there. We had a big one the other day, we had a big one today, and it's a little clustery because of the, not because of what's going on in the schools or anything else, it's because the street, one side you can go on, one in and on. We did do some signs, so now they'll know that certain parking areas are for teachers, Monday through Friday, 7 to 4. So this way they'll know, we're gonna do plackets, because we gave them other spaces, 15 other spaces, we'll do placards for the teachers to put in their windows, and no one gets a ticket. And we'll also get some signs up at Burns Field, please bring your dog, if you're gonna watch your dog, put it on a leash, because we've had complaints about dogs on leash attacking one another, we have children there, and we're gonna have someone walking around during, certain times, we're not gonna let everyone know what time, but they'll be there looking around and saying, you know what, out of this area to do that, so and then we're gonna have, Ben is working on crossing guards. West Parish and St. Anne's,
Yeah,
Yeah.
oh, sure, we only have 3 of them or something?
everyone's shot in the whole state.
Yeah.
Yeah, so-
Everything.
What about the
shot,
park
yeah.
rangers? I asked you.
We're
that.
working, that's what
That's what we're working on,
Okay, all right,
Father
they're
Jim.
crossing guards now.
awesome.
Father Jim has graciously allowed staff to use the lower space below the church where these functions are typically held. So the Principal Fusco's been having some staff meetings down there. They looked at it as an alternative for indoor recess, and when they went down there with the custodian looked to Principal Fusco and they said, "This place is spotless. We will ruin it. Do not, do not send, hundreds of K through 5 down here. We will never, this place will never recover from what we'll do to it. We're an elementary school. This place is in too good condition. So indoor recess will remain indoor recess like they did, previous years, hanging out in the classroom, but the school staff otherwise has access. And then Father Jim's made the convent available for staff bathrooms, that sort of thing.
Right, we needed that at one point because we had the first week of school, we had a draining problem, but that was remedied very quickly.
And what about, we didn't cook the first time we used the school, we brought in,
Yeah, so-
meals, but
so-
now you've done something. and-
Yeah, so there's no cooking there, but there is the capacity to keep things warm.
Yeah.
And also clean things, keep things warm, clean things, so there's a sink, there's like a warming.
And the fire inspection was done, so wasn't the building inspector, we sent them again. I did get that email and we resent them again, there was no major concerns or it changes that you need a sprinkle system, because it's not cooking.
No, yeah, so,
I just heard that the cafeteria changed a little bit, that
no, so it's on the,
preparation of food.
yeah,
changed a little
preparation
bit.
has changed, and the primary reason for that is because the space they had for preparation when West Parish was there was at O'Malley, and that space is now a walk-in refrigerator.
Okay,
So we lost that space at O'Malley for a good purpose.
yeah,
So we need space on site to do that sort of thing. So it's really food preparation, it's not cooking.
Yeah.
And then in that area, we're gonna be adding some ventilation as well, in that food prep area. One city councilor asked for a tour of the building, this is today, so I wanna make sure you guys know about this. I have offered to, instead of having individual tours for any city councilor who asked, I've reached out to the city council
City
president
yeah.
to have folks, have a time that Mr. Fusco can give city councilors a tour. He and I suggested this Friday at 9:45, I believe it is. We get happy to do the same for all of you folks, none of you had asked, but I should have offered that for you guys to see the school. So we can arrange that for you as well, if folks like that. But I prefer to do it, in a group as opposed to one by one.
Okay, anything else on buildings? Okay, we're gonna move on to consideration of support for the House Bill number 926, which is tabled from. This is the bill that's working its way, I think, fairly slowly through the House. Changing the list of pesticides that can be used on school grounds. I think you've all gotten information about it, a number of things, and so the thought was that we would just write a letter of support saying Gloucester School Committee supports the passage of bill number 926.
I want to thank Patty Page and Masha, they worked very hard on that. And if they
this,
can bring it to our attention, sometimes things are brought after, which is, we're very lucky that they brought it before. We don't want something to happen after. We say, why didn't we do something? This is the opportunity to do it.
so, and as Ben reported 2 weeks ago, that Mike Hale says that actually we don't use any
So we
pesticides.
want to make sure it doesn't.
But
For other schools.
I had a issue at my shop today or this week where I had a wasp nest that was in the way and I ended up hiring a company from Manchester to come and make it go away. And they used poison.
Yeah,
So it's probably, it's, you know, there's always a, you know, a cost benefit way, you know, you can get stung every day, you know. Or you can, or you could, you know,
screen might have it.
spray a little poison around for a half. Anyway, so I would make a motion that we authorize or we send a letter from the Gloucester School Committee to the appropriate legislators supporting the passage of Bill 926.
Second.
Joel?
So I just wanna just think really quickly about, as Mike has said, this does not impact the Gloucester Public Schools. And if we were concerned in the future, the future DPW director was gonna start using pesticides, we I think on a city or district level could use policy, local policy to ensure that this stuff, wasn't going to be used, pesticides period weren't going to be used in our school grounds like they're not currently. And so I'm just curious, like, who are we, the Gloucester School Committee, to opine, on what chemicals should or should not be used in other jurisdictions? Is that really our charge? Is that really our responsibility? Is that really our business? As a school committee tasked with taking care of our district. This is not an educational issue. We're not, petitioning DESE to do something. We're not petitioning the legislature to change, chapter 70 funding. We're petitioning the legislature to enact a law regarding pesticides and herbicides, none of which impact our district.
Well,
And all of which are beyond our
Right
expertise.
now.
But again, if we're concerned about that, our avenue of methodology is to go use our local policymaking and local legislative abilities. Like, for instance, silly string is banned in Gloucester. It's in the code of ordinances, right? It's not banned in the state, but it's banned in Gloucester, silly string.
Really?
In the 90s, it was a big silly string thing. So it's in the code of ordinances. Yeah. So all I'm saying is if we were really concerned about this,
Mayor Van, so
we have an avenue to take care of our district,
Young.
right?
It's worse than your TikTok thing going on.
Yeah, so I just don't know, if this is our concern, wouldn't the more appropriate thing be for us to say, hey, we'd like to make sure that there's a permanent solution here in Gloucester, that pesticides and herbicides are just not going to be used on Gloucester public school grounds, rather than us wading into something that is outside our expertise. I'm not a chemist. Are you a chemist? I'm not an insectologist. I don't think anyone here is either. Like, who are we to say, that for what these other communities should be doing in this regard, that is not related to our school district and is not related to education statewide.
But it's helping other communities that might not even know or be informed about it. It's saying no pesticides in the
Sure, but we as a
schools.
school committee, why would we, like, that's not our job.
It's your job to protect the children.
Ours.
What do you mean? We're
No, that's
doctors
not true.
now, we're
Our children go to other
making
schools.
vaccine rules,
That's what I'm saying.
might as well be environmentalists, let's just add to the list.
Well, aren't we?
Yeah, we're making that.
You're saying no wear masks, you're saying wear masks, you're saying get vaccinated.
Okay.
I mean, really, our children go to other schools too, don't forget.
I wanna
They're still
say two
a part of our school
I want to say
system.
two things. Firstly, not on Joel's point. What was in our packet didn't tell me much about what's actually in this bill, but the two women who've spoken have said much more about what's in the bill. But I'm not exactly clear on the bill. I haven't read the bill. I mentioned to Jonathan that someone from the Board of Health has been asked to be a liaison to the committee, and she asked if I would be our liaison to the committee, which I don't really understand what that means, so I asked for more clarification. But I would want to see what it is they're actually asking. I mean, until I see it in writing, I'm not exactly clear on what this is, other than something that sounds, from my perspective, very reasonable, that banned pesticides shouldn't be used on school grounds anywhere in the Commonwealth. I agree with that, but I would want to know more and to follow the Board of Health on it. If the Gloucester Board of Health, from my perspective, this is just me, feels that this is something worth making a statement about, I think that would be a good cue for us.
I think they voted on it to support them.
When I
That's-
sent that to Max today, and he sent me an email saying that he's working with them
Yeah, no,
on
there's,
this.
yeah, that's my,
So-
I'm not clear on how this is working, I'm just saying that I got this email to do something, which I'm not clear on also.
It's the same thing of, then why are we saying no spraying? No spraying for West Nile. I mean, and I'm just afraid that we don't have the time of the deadline. And these two women they've come across, they asked over and over if they can do presentations. They said that Senator Tara's also supporting that. He doesn't want the pesticides. So, I mean, you don't have to vote on it, but just so you know, just be aware of what's going on and chemicals that are being put in.
I'm completely
Yeah.
aware and I'm very, very, very sympathetic to this and don't use Roundup or anything else in my home and wouldn't, but I just, as a body, if we're gonna write a letter and sign it, I personally, like, I just need to see something in writing about exactly what it is.
Well, and she has sent it out. She has sent it out
Well,
over and over, yeah. So,
There's something in the thing that was in our packet is sort of refers to other parts of the code, which were not part of our packet, at least that's what I got. Did anyone else?
I can read you the whole bill,
Well,
Well, there's two bills.
well, there's only one that we've been asked to vote, to support. And it says, section 1, chapter 132B, section G6 of the general law hereby amended by striking section G6, A through D, inserting the following. A, pesticides classified by the United States Environmental Protection Agency as an exempt material pursuant of 40 CFR 152.25 as amended, or B, a pesticide including no active ingredients other than those published in the national list at 7 CFR 205-601 as amended. That's it.
I mean, so,
But those lists weren't in the packet. That refers to two separate lists that are in the packet.
so to
It's a
to
list of
Joel's
chemical
point,
everything.
last meeting, we said that we were gonna wait to hear from the
Board of Health.
Board of Health, which we haven't, so. Because we aren't necessarily a committee that can really make decisions about pesticides, I think that's grounds, I don't know. So if the Board of Health thinks it's something that we should support,
Okay. Well, I will inquire of the Board of Health, and if without objection, we'll table.
and have you
this.
checked about those rat boxes that are all around the schools? Isn't there poison in there? And they're in your schools?
I don't know about the rat boxes.
Oh, they sent pictures all around, Jonathan.
Well,
Come on.
but, okay, I don't,
Yeah, let's not.
I
get
haven't seen the
into it.
pictures. I haven't seen the pictures.
I haven't seen anything.
You're telling me you never saw any of those pictures of the rat boxes?
No.
that
Where's
are
the
in
rat
schools?
box?
Those rat boxes that they put in. She sent them all out.
Not to any of us.
I didn't get anything.
she,
Not, you've never gotten anything from.
I don't even know what a rat box is.
All
I'd like
right.
to know though.
So what I just suggest is that we table this until we get more information from a recommendation from the Board of Health.
so
Okay.
Jonathan, do you want me to ask for that?
Yes,
Okay, so
That would
I'll
be-
make that my,
okay,
I will ask for that.
okay. Thank you. All right, we'll move on. We have an issue about the building use.
Can I just correct something? I was mistaken. It was not 7 years ago. It was in September that we did the groundbreaking.
September
Just wanted to be
21st.
clear.
It was
That
yesterday.
was like September 16th.
Or 2 days ago?
I don't know. The article was on September 17th.
Got it.
Oh,
Shoot.
Oh,
Cancel the whole project.
Yeah.
It wasn't the exact same day 10 years ago?
I wouldn't
Yeah,
say
it was
something
nice,
like
right?
that.
It was a pandemic stage for it.
Okay, we have our school facilities policy, file KF, and the community use of school facilities procedures file KF-R. Ben has an issue at hand and regarding this policy. And needs some input from us about how to make a decision on whether he should grant the use of the goat.
That's a
That's a
great
goal, okay.
Yeah, I'm behind you with that goal.
What's that goal?
It feels pretty bold.
Right.
That's bold.
Okay. So I would like, and again, I'm not clear if this is a change, I mean, in the policy or just, I can do this administratively, but I also want to discuss with you in case we need to do some temporary changes. We would like to limit the use of school facilities for this year to three primary things, okay? School sponsored functions, city sponsored functions, so for example, something held by a department or functions hosted by established school partner organizations. An example of that actually was something that's coming up soon. We obviously work with the Chamber of Commerce. We know them well. They want to host, as they do, I think every year, because it's my first election year, debates on 2 different nights in the auditorium. Okay. We feel if we limit to, I think it's here. Yeah, I think it's here.
Yeah.
Do we ever, I don't know what we're doing. I've never been at a debate.
No, they want to be able to spread out.
Yeah.
They want to be able to socially.
Listen, so that's new. That's a new event. That's
I've been
I know, but the
I've been there
Chamber of
too.
Commerce is a group we work with, and it's
Neither
a,
O'Malley.
it's a
when I first
So-
got on.
So the point of those three groupings there is that we're confident that either it's run by ourselves or run by a city department in conjunction with us, or it's hosted by a partner we know well. We can make sure, and we're very confident those folks will run it in a way where 2 things. 1, it abides by our safety protocols, it's a safe event. But 2, it's wouldn't be an event which is bringing people from all over the region, all over across multiple states here, okay? We want to very much avoid outside organizations hosting large events that are bringing many people from all over the, whatever, the Commonwealth or the region, and aren't run, and we don't know them, so we can't be confident that they'll be run in a way that doesn't become a super spreader event.
Do those happen, those events?
We've already had 1 request. And so, and then also, so that's, and an example of something that we would consider and would like to host is something that is the JROTC program hosts events. I think it's every year. It's a competition essentially.
Drill, yeah.
Yeah, a drill competition that for us, it would bring people from a variety of places, but because it's run by us, and particularly because of the type of organization it is, we're confident that they would abide by the rules and we can control that much better. Okay.
That's like a basketball game, right?
Yeah, I mean, they do a basketball tournament, it's sponsored by the banks or something over the holidays, and it's just a local.
What
you know,
about like the cheerleader competition at the end of the year that they have? That's a big one at the high school.
That would be something that isn't run by us, that's run by an outside organization that brings
Plus the
many
high
people
school
from,
cheerleaders are doing
no, I think they participate in it.
participate, yeah.
That's different than running it.
Right, no, I
Yeah,
get it.
and for us, that's actually, that is the difference, it's a major difference. You know, we're saying one thing, but if it's an outside organization that we have, no established partnership with, they aren't folks we regularly work with. I honestly do not want to go through the trying to, us manage, oversee, or make sure that's a safe event. I don't want our schools to be host of an event that could, because we don't know what's happening there, could lead to being a super spreader event. I mean, I don't, I'm not joking when I say that.
Yeah.
So what's the difference of a basketball game versus a cheerleaders competition? I'm just trying to figure out how you're gonna tell some of our students they can't use our schools, but some can.
Well,
I'm just trying to understand. I know
The
you
distinction
get
I'm
the
making,
whole
the distinction I'm making is who's running and hosting the event.
Right,
Is it
so
someone?
who does the cheerleading? I mean, it's a sports
it's a
thing.
business,
It's a business?
Yeah. it's a business. I mean, it's, I don't know how it's set up as a business, but it's a for-profit organization
Yeah, exactly.
that,
Okay,
promotes, I mean, it's just like beauty contests or cheerleading
Okay.
or,
I didn't know if it had anything to do with the MIA or
no,
anything like that.
MIA cheerleading's not recognized as a sport by MIA.
But that is a very good example. actually.
Okay,
Um,
I didn't know that. so-
Whereas the basketball is, I think, I don't know which banks, but I think it's sponsored by local businesses, and the participants are Manchester, Rockport, Gloucester.
And Gloucester's hosting.
And
the
Gloucester
tournament.
hosts it, and our athletic director is involved in
Yeah, right,
running it.
right. And in that case, you know, especially our athletic director is involved running it like got complete confidence in it, you know? And we have then control though, if people aren't abiding by them.
Right.
We know what we can do. which is,
Right.
obviously-
No, I just,
Yep.
I understood the cheerleading to be something different, so.
Is there any downside to not allowing, I mean, is it a financial resource? Is it,
Not a significant. We basically, we recoup the costs. if
Okay.
that was something.
I mean, the benefits of not.
Yeah, the janitors get some overtime.
So isn't our policy that you can say yes or no?
Well,
Like,
it
we
says the
support-
school committee can cancel any permission granted is number 10.
Yeah.
So we can cancel it before you even start it.
Why give it permission?
Yeah, that's why I wasn't, you know, I wanted to bring it to you, I wasn't quite clear about, you know, I'm informing you in a sense. I mean, that's one way to.
This is what you're gonna be doing this year.
Yeah, I mean, another way of doing it, is if you guys give me the thumbs up with a vote, either way, you know,
That's fine.
you know,
It says you do the authorization and we can cancel it. So you can decide who you can authorize.
so this is how I will follow, this is what I will follow here.
Yes.
Going forward.
Sounds
Have
good.
fun.
Thank you. I think that's fine. I don't think we need to change any policy.
Thank you.
Okay, there was another issue that Melissa brought up about our policy. It's not even our policy, it's a state law about remote participation. And remote participation was something that the state allowed, I don't know, probably 15 years ago, as I recall, because I and the mayor may remember this, the first time they tried to do it was Bruce Toby, who was a counselor, was in Florida or something, and
yeah.
called in
Always.
and to vote on something, and I just remember it wasn't.
Kyrie's was
Didn't
not
go
ready.
well,
Yeah.
I mean, it was.
It was allowable, but it's.
Oh, it was allowable, but I'm just saying, the state passed this,
Yeah.
basically allowed this.
And the
And
cities
then
had to
The
vote it
city
individually.
then voted to do it. And I think the schools voted to do it. But it's not in our policy manual or anything. It's just apparently we agreed to do it. Well, so the issue is that they have a fairly strict list of reasons you can do it for. And one is illness, one is that you're out of state, and one is
Disability.
disability, yeah, for some reason.
Yeah.
So the question is, do we want to, with COVID and with Zoom and the reality of all of that, do we want to look at that as a policy that we want to amend, even though it's not a policy, it's a state law that we approve, that we accept it.
So can I say first I brought up the fact that I was on a Zoom meeting for BNF. This is what started the conversation, not that. That I had questions at BNF but didn't get recognized, and I'm not saying it was intentional. It's just us being aware that if we're gonna do some meetings by Zoom, does someone a school committee member can ask questions to the chair of a subcommittee? Is there an expectation that that school committee member is gonna be in the room while the meeting is happening? Or will somebody be watching online to see if a hand is raised? So that was the question that I talked to Jonathan about first. That
Dorothy, when we
came
had a
later.
meeting with Dorothy made it very clear that we weren't actually supposed to be asking
No, we can
questions.
ask questions. We can't deliberate and we can't participate in the conversation. We can definitely ask questions to the chair.
What she said in our meeting was that we have to allow other community members to do the same thing. That's
We have to what?
We would have to allow
Allow other
other community
Right.
members to do
We
the
asked
same thing.
questions.
We
That,
can
I
only
disagree
listen.
with that 1,000%. I've had more training on this than I ever need to, but all my training goes back to, and it's MASC that trained this to me over 14 years, is that school committee members during a subcommittee meeting can ask a question through the chair. They're not supposed to sit at the table, they're not supposed to engage in the conversation, but they have the right to ask questions. And if you think about that, it's probably because, say, this is a good example. So I wasn't able to answer questions to get directed to Adam at the subcommittee meeting. Now I have questions, but Adam's not here. You know what I mean? So it's to allow that process to get questions answered only, not to deliberate, not to cause the conversation to change, but to get questions asked. We have that right. The only time a school committee member doesn't have a right to be involved in subcommittee is when it's executive session. A subcommittee, it's an executive session.
We should get clarification. from
Right, so
Dorothy.
that's my point too. Well, not
She-
just Dorothy, but I think
Well, she-
the legal department as well. And also for the open meeting law, you're talking about amending a state law. I don't know that we have authority to do that in the way that we want to. So I think we should reach out to some legal entity to find out the answer to this question. Because MASC tells me one thing and you're quoting Dorothy to say something else, which I completely disagree with. But also, can we amend or create any policy that goes against open meeting law that involves remote participation? So I
Has
see that
remote
we have two different issues.
But can I mean, we have all these new laws about remote participation now, right? Like
Yeah.
that didn't seem to refer back to this law,
Exactly.
right? So,
Have they finished though? Have they actually finished with the
Well,
new
that's the
legislation?
question too.
Because there was emergency
Yeah.
legislation that was expiring, and then they were supposed to be coming out with like the forward facing, okay, now that we're in the new reality, here's how, well, I thought it
So it's
wasn't finished
my,
yet.
and just to quickly to that, Joe, because that's how I was feeling, because I was trying to figure out how to do that, and I had to talk with Jonathan, and that's what we came back to was the remote participation. It's my understanding that the governor relaxed the laws of open meeting law during COVID and
Mhm.
allowed all this to happen. But when he declared the state of emergency over, that ended that ability. And that the legislature was supposed to go in as soon as possible and try to create extensions or new laws to allow this to continue. I don't know that that ever came to fruition.
Hmm.
So that's why I'm saying a legal opinion to find out, can we do something somehow with remote? I'm not wanting to say no to you, I'm just trying to figure out how do we do it without being challenged if someone wanted to say we have an open meeting law violation by allowing it, that's all, I'm not trying to be difficult with Zoom and how we zoom in. But I'm just trying to get clarification because we really haven't discussed it as a group and what our expectations are. So how do we move forward?
Meaning what are for each other's presence.
Well, there's two different issues that
Right.
I asked Jonathan about within a certain day. My question was about me trying to ask a question through BNF. And then I got a request to have a Zoom in during a negotiation meeting because someone couldn't be there. So it was two different things that got brought up and those are two different issues as I see it.
Mhm.
And I'm just trying to figure out how to navigate for us and what's best for us to work together as a team,
Well,
not try to
It's
put any
anecdotal,
barriers up.
but other boards, I don't know, school committees, I know other boards across Cape Ann are still meeting entirely remotely.
Entirely remote, but we voted to go in person. So if you vote to go in person, does that mean you still have the ability
Oh, I see.
to zoom
I
out?
see.
You know what I mean?
Yeah,
That's
yeah.
my question, not, I
well,
mean-
but if it's our vote, and I remember when we
but is
first.
it an open meeting law violation, is all I'm asking.
Hmm.
But if open meeting law is a state law, and if we as a district can make a policy to do it our way, then how could it be an open meeting law violation?
So if open meeting law says, no, you can't do this, that doesn't mean that we can say we can.
Right, but if other districts are meeting via Zoom,
Well, that's all Zoom though. They're not doing half in, half out. That I know of, and I don't even know, I said, we just need to get a legal opinion.
Okay, okay, so
I'm not trying to stop anything, I just wanna make sure that we're consistent and that we're not violating any
so why
open meeting law.
don't we do that? Why don't we reach out and just have someone give us legal opinions of what we can do? And then we know what we can do, we can decide what we want to do. within the
Right,
limits.
exactly, what are our boundaries and what do we have to stick with?
You know, what that happened on the city's time, I remember that all of a sudden that we weren't allowed to speak at subcommittee meetings. As long as it depends how many councils were there, and they said it was we have
We
councils
become
here.
a quorum,
It
so
becomes
that's
a
why
quorum,
you can
that's
ask
okay,
questions.
but the fact is that there was buildings, there was things being done, and we had to go through, all of a sudden, no one was allowed to ask questions, you had to go through the chair.
Right,
well-
you ask a question through the chair at a subcommittee.
Yeah, but that, it was never, before there was no problems. Everyone asked questions. That was, you were there. You were there like a citizen, you were there like a city council. You're at a meeting. And now all of a sudden, you don't have right to ask questions, you don't have right to this, and you can't do that, and you can't do that, go everything through the chair. If the chair decided that they're not gonna let you have questions, you don't have any, and just like you, we go to a meeting and then how do we get our answers?
Well, I ask here, but you're asking here after the conversation already happened, so, okay, so now every time we have a presentation at subcommittee level, let's have it at the full committee level too, so that we can all ask the questions, I mean, that doesn't make sense.
I think
You know, it's
there's
duplicitous.
a simple
Yeah, I
solution
agree.
to that, is that we just need to have who's ever the chair of the committee, make sure that they're paying attention to the Zoom. If there's.
Well, it's the same thing.
if-
I'm left out of all your subcommittee meetings. When I wanna come, they say, well, you're not belonging to the subcommittee, so you can't come in.
Well, they're on Zoom.
Well, it doesn't matter. Am I gonna be able to ask questions?
Well, that's
I
what
get
I'm
blamed for
asking.
everything?
They're public.
So I'm just trying to figure out if I should come to a meeting, if
Yeah, well,
I need to
I
go
know
to
they're
it, or if
public.
I should see on
I think you
Zoom.
should be able to be on Zoom.
Yeah.
I think that's a principle, until we're told otherwise. Because again, that just makes these meetings more available,
Right,
for us to sit in on other ones, without having to drive all the way over. Just more conscientious about making sure that, I'll be conscientious of the next programs, make sure that I'm looking for hands.
Yeah, because that's all it takes, is that who's ever the chair and running the committee has to pay attention to the attendees if there's school committee members in attendance, and if they have raised their hand.
But I do think we need to get clarification because Dorothy said that we have to allow
Yeah.
other
Okay.
community members to do that.
I go right now, I'm gonna call it first
Okay.
thing tomorrow morning.
So it just, if we open that, that's like Pandora's
Well, I
box.
think
But
right now-
No, you don't
I
have to. You get that clarification, I'm sorry, but
I have it
any
in our notes.
subcommittee
You did
meeting,
say
it
it.
goes through the chair.
I know, but I think pragmatically,
Yeah.
it's maybe not an issue.
so was
because
Mike Gilbert.
How many people are at
I know
subcommittee
that.
meetings,
Right. But he was years ago when she was.
But the law hasn't changed.
Well, school
Like-
committee must be different than city council then. Why is, conflict of
I have no
laws?
idea. We had a governance meeting and this is what she told us.
But like, for instance, at BNF, if
We
Melissa
can
been
get that
noticed,
clarified.
right, if she'd been noticed and she spoke, there was nobody else at BNF in the attendees except for Sam and Melissa, so it wouldn't have even mattered whether everyone had a chance or not, because the only people looking were, so I don't think it would be as big a.
Yeah, I'd like that clarified, because you know what, you guys are having meetings, and I'm not allowed to go into meetings and ask questions, but I'm getting blamed for everything that everyone's doing, so I'd really like to know.
I mean, think about it, we're
Clarification.
voting on something we can't ask questions to, that's
That's, I mean,
crazy.
we need to clarify that, because on the same thing, city council, they're saying it's up to the chair, so I don't know,
Yeah.
school committee's
But
different.
my guess is it's probably up to the chair as well, we're
Okay.
speaking to
Yeah.
the chair.
I will get clarification on that part of it, but I think the important thing is that subcommittee chairs pay attention to the attendees and see if there's any issues. And as far as we'll get, I'll try MASC to see if they have an opinion on the remote participation issue. But I've got a feeling that there's it's,
Right.
there is not a clear.
No, whatever.
That's Naomi, because she talks to the Attorney General's office, and they're the governor of open meeting law, so I think
But also we're having
she
meetings,
works with them.
we're having meetings like subcommittee meetings, right? We're talking about it now, and then some people are in person and some people are on Zoom, right? Isn't this a con? You were on Zoom for BNF? Is BNF in person?
Yeah,
Members in person, the members of BNF were in person.
Right.
and that was my question, should I go to the meeting to
Right.
ask a question, or
Right,
can
and
I do
I
it?
understand, but we also, this is a model of like a hybrid model, basically. This is a model.
Yeah, but is it right, too?
I hope.
Right, but I think, I think maybe we have a little bit of practical,
Yeah, I got a feeling that the law is not caught up with
Yeah.
reality.
And there could be something we don't know about that COVID is allowing too, and that's why.
Can I ask you something? So you're saying this with the Zoom, so when you guys have subcommittee meetings,
Mhm.
so people come to those meetings, because the public meetings, they're not allowed to talk about it.
No,
No.
At the chair's discretion.
It's up to the chair, and if another person asks a question, they're asking it through the chair. In other words, the questions go into the chair, and the chair decides whether that question should be
So they're
answered or
they're
not.
trying to say that via Zoom it's different then?
No.
I'm
I'm just trying to figure out if I can ask questions now, and do I have to be at the meeting to ask the question? And then also, do we have to comply with the remote participation law that's 12 years old when it comes to issues that are happening now during COVID? Those are my questions. Not trying to change anything, do anything, but just make sure we're doing it right, that's all.
Well, you want transparency, and what I'm saying is you're having subcommittee meetings, whether it's the school subcommittee meeting or any other subcommittee meetings. When you're in person, okay, let's just say it's in person, and people are coming, it's through the chair. That if you want to have people speak or ask questions.
Yes.
That's what I wanted,
Yep.
I wanted to
Through the
say,
chair.
through the chair. Same thing, school, as, city.
So
Because
that's,
all the Zoom is confusing for everyone.
so that's all we're saying right now is that the chair's got to pay attention to the audience.
Yeah.
So.
Good.
Okay, until we get more information about. No, shred these.
Recycle.
Cycle.
I
Or
got
give them
lots,
to
I
staff.
got lots of friends who can see.
Yeah,
that.
I was gonna say, give them to staff.
I wrote on. mine.
Okay, is there anything else you want to talk about before we,
How come recognitions aren't on the agenda anymore?
Oh, yeah.
oh,
They've been out the last couple, I think.
Yeah, you're right.
Last couple.
no recognition,
They
you're
weren't the
right. I
last
didn't- We didn't ask for them.
Yeah, just
Yeah.
have them maybe put those on the agenda.
They should be, they should be there.
There we go.
Okay.
Least controversial, I said, I think I've said it 6 years, you're all welcome. I'm trying to get the hang of it.
And nobody's watching it, and nobody's watching it.
Right.
Okay, and do we have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
Maria, roll call vote.
Yes.
Kathy,
Yes.
Joel,
Yes.
Jonathan,
Yes.
Melissa.
Yeah.
Sabathia.
Yes.
See, that's another thing that we need to
Yes.
look into. Why do we have to, if we're here in person, why do we have?
Why do we have to have a roll
roll call votes, that we had to have them on Zoom,
You don't.
Yeah, we should
I
do
know.
a roll call.
you know,
Oh, well.
okay.
Well, the language, though, that 2020 that I read, that you don't read, which is different, the Act
All
20
votes would be-
says that all votes are protocol, even though
Or
the
can I-
meeting is
can I
being held.
disconnect?
Yeah, you can always, you can always.
Yeah.
You can just say it's been held.
Programs. When?
The language that I read, that is the newest language that Chip told me to read.